Let's get started. We're back from closed session. Some of us anyway. Could I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lawrence.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Obaji.
Here.
Councilmember MD. Here. And Mayor Brand.
Here. Thank you, Vicki. Do we have any announcements from closed session?
No reportable action tonight other than for the attendees. We had Captain John Naylor in attendance from the police department in one of the cases.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
No, there actually is reportable action. The council voted unanimously to join the lawsuit against the state of California to challenge the constitutionality of SB 10. Will be joined as a co-plaintiff with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
Okay, that's a big deal. Thank you, Mike. I had thought that, so thanks for stepping in. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Obaji, second by Councilmember Lowenstein to adjourn. Are there any objections? Okay, so ordered. Now I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the City Council. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Obaji.
Here.
And Councilmember MD. Here. And Mayor Brand.
Here. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank
Let's
you.
all rise and salute the flag and take a moment of silence, please. Okay, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
liberty
and justice for all.
for all.
Okay, thank you. Well, tonight's a special night for a couple reasons. The first and most important is a major retirement here in the city of Redondo Beach, and that's of our city manager, Joe Hefkin. So I wanted to say a few words about Joe and open it up to the rest of the council. Anybody else wants to speak, but you know, Joe came in kind of quietly as director of our community services, recreation and community services back in 2011. I was on the council, and he had been city manager of Palos Verdes Estate. So he'd been around and brought a lot of experience and a welcome, quiet nature about him. And yeah, helped us with the parks and stuff that was going on. And then, boy, we ran into some real turmoil. I forget exactly the years. I think it was something in the neighborhood of 2015, maybe late 2014. We lost our city manager at the time. And Joe had been serving as assistant city manager, and he stepped right in. He stepped right into what was a real Donnybrook going on between you know, our top city staff and our employees, and what turned out to be with the council. So yeah, I mean, we went through a big search, interviewed a lot of people, and for new city manager, and we selected Joe over some good candidates. And Joe was really the right person at the right time. You know, the city of Redondo Beach was ready for some peace and quiet. A lot of you weren't there. Some of you were. Councilmember MD knows what I'm talking about. And it was tough. And the employees were, you know, coming off a hurt, and they were looking to restart and get a fresh start and get back to business as usual. And that's exactly what Joe brought to the table. So it was an important time to really allow the city to reinvigorate itself, the staff in particularly. So I really can be forever indebted to Joe to bringing that kind of calm nature to it, as well as his calm nature throughout. I mean, we all see how this council carries on, and public and, you know, outside interests, inside interests. And Joe always brought a breath of calm, and that was much appreciated. So we went on and do a lot of things. I'll let the council cite those things. But anyway, I just want to really thank Joe for everything he's done and take this opportunity to wish him well in retirement. He's had a long, long history of city, civic public servant, really, for decades. And so I hope you're going out with a good feeling on everything. You certainly deserve it. You certainly earned it. And I know I speak for many in the community, many of the employees to wish you well and thank you for your service. So it's a shame we're not in the audience. We'd get a big applause, yay! But I'll turn it over to the council, and I know a lot of people appreciate it. So I'll just go down the line. I imagine everybody's got something to say. You want to start, Nils?
Yeah, I'd love to start. Thank you, Mayor Brand. Joe, it's been a pleasure. You're my first city manager, and I don't know what's like being on the council when I got here. It was so refreshing to have someone like you to not just be a bully like I've heard the tragic story of other councils or other cities. And what's really nice to hear about you from what the employees, what I get to hear is you don't micromanage employees and tell them, must use a blue ink at certain size and sign on by this. It's, hey, you let the employees do what they need to do. And that to me is really important because I'm not a micromanager either. And I really respect it when bosses leave their employees and trust their employees. It's so few and far between for bosses and people nowadays to trust other people. So, you've done some great work here in Redondo. You've really led us through some choppy waters, and we're going to be going on without you. So hopefully wish us luck on what we're doing. I know if you're from back east, and I don't know what you got endeavors moving forward. So thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. As a new council member that came up here a couple of years ago, it was nice to have someone like you. And you and Mike worked together really well. I mean, you really did. So thank you very much for your service. It's not easy. It's a lot of hits, as you know. You're kind of a politician too, because you're taking the hits. It's not deserved at all. Some 90% of the time, 99. It's us up here. So thank you very much. You implement what we do. Thank you very much what you've done, and I appreciate all the work and effort. Thank you. Enjoy.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, Joe, you have the hardest job of any of us. You've got 5 bosses plus the mayor. And I wouldn't want to necessarily be in your shoes. It's tough, right? But you've got, so many years. I looked through your resume, besides, California cities like PV Estates and Encinitas and Del Mar. I mean, you're in University Park and San Antonio in Texas. So you bring a real, diversity of experience with you. And I think the mark that you've left the most on our city is the people that you've hired, which is really important because we don't have a chance ourselves to hire people. We have one employee, and that's you. And so I think you're leaving the city better than you found it, a good legacy. And, I hope you spend some time not only with your wife and kids, but your mom back in Kansas. And so as a fellow Midwesterner, you're not so bad for a Jayhawk. I'll just put it that way. So thank you for all your time with the city of Redondo Beach. And I know I'm joined by everybody else in wishing you well in retirement. So thanks, Joe.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, the mayor said that Joe, that you're quiet, and you tend to be, but I will say this: Joe's got a wicked sense of humor, and so in the opportunities where we've been able to maybe go to a league conference together or whatnot, it's been great to get to know him a little bit personally outside from the job here on site and in the roles that we play. I met his wife Audrey. She's absolutely lovely as well. And I mean, Joe is a family guy, right? He's always talking about his kids, if you give him an opportunity to. And I think that family man thing comes across in the way that he has managed here in Redondo Beach. As the mayor alluded to, he came in during a really tough time. And a really tough transition period, and he calmed those waters, and then he really put together a great team. He brought on Mike Wazanski as his assistant city manager. He hired Keith Kaufman, after having John New come in and do the assessment of the PD, which was a really big deal, he hired Ted Saman, our Public Works Director, Diane Strickfaden, our Human Resources Director, Brandy Forbes, Stephen Proud. I mean, like, he really put together what I would say was a great team for all the challenges. You know, this council has, or the iterations of this council since I've been here in 2015, I've had a great many challenges, even up to just these past 18 months with COVID. And Joe appointed the 17-member disaster council and worked with the mayor and all those people to kind of get us through what was and every city's a really challenging time. So Joe was super instrumental in everything we're doing in the homeless sector right now. He started the homeless task force, the original one that kind of led us down the path to some of the early strategies we undertook before we actually had a homeless plan. And then he was also engaged on the Measure H committee representing cities. So great leadership and great early leadership in those areas. I would just say, Joe, I wish you nothing more than happiness and a little bit of relaxation, in the years to come. And I hope you and Audrey get the travel and enjoy your kids and do everything that you should do. And thank you so much. You've been a great individual to work with. You've become a personal friend, and I truly appreciate you and what you brought to this position, and you will be missed.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Horvath, Councilmember Obaji.
Hi, Joe. You welcomed me about 6 months ago. Thank you. You gave me a very warm welcome. Totally didn't prepare me for Councilmember MD's treatment. Just kidding. So that was a joke. I remember when I met you, you had your Chargers face mask on, and we shared the love for the Chargers, and they've been doing darn well this year. But I'm disappointed that we haven't had the Chargers come visit us yet. I was hoping we'd see that at some point. No, I really appreciate the team that you put together. I could probably work with them more than you, but they're all super sharp, all super dedicated, super responsive. And I think they reflect the kind of person and leader that you are. So thank you for that. Thanks for all your years of service to the city of Redondo Beach and for leaving us off in a good spot.
Yeah, excellent. Councilmember MD.
As was mentioned by several, that your leadership was much needed in Redondo Beach when you first got here. It was absolutely necessary, and it was you that kind of put us in the right path. You've worked here for 10 years, and your path to get here has been kind of a meandering, like they said, from San Antonio, 4 different coastal cities that you've had to deal with, and you came to us with a big breadth of experience that was totally needed in Redondo Beach. And you came up, and as is Redondo's MO, is that we always have something that's very unique to Redondo Beach. And so as Christian said about the homeless task force, also you helped set up the Aviation Artesia Revitalization Committee, and you had to kind of wrangle a whole bunch of different personalities on that committee. And that's really where your skill is that's what you do, is you're able to kind of bring everyone together and get them to work together and create a product that's great. Including the Cannabis Steering Committee. Also, you tackled right off, and you kind of help us kind of put a framework that the council can work within. And that's wonderful. We've already mentioned your team, and also you kind of took the lead in the COVID-19 disaster. And, we were upfront with that, and I take that to your leadership on that as well. And you did great. And it was kind of glossed over, but you kind of took charge of the John New situation, and you brought him in and made sure they completely revamped the police department. The police department needed some help, and it was because of your leadership and your creativity on how you were going to handle that ended up turning around really well. And I have total faith that your leadership on the fire department is going to do the same. So, your wife is charming, Audrey, and I really am thankful that I got to know her. And and wish you the best of luck with everything, and that you'll get to go see your mom more in Kansas.
Okay. The only staff person that he hired that we left out was Jennifer Paul. So yeah, another great hire by City Manager Joe Hefkin. And while I do this little special presentation, I want to encourage anybody on the staff that wants to say anything, go ahead and put your hand up, and feel free to take your time and pass along your accolades if you feel like it. But with that, I haven't done this in a while, and I don't think I've ever done it virtually. But Joe, I know the council supports this, as does the rest of the city. I want to give you a key to the city from myself and the rest of the council. There it is. Can you see it yet? Well, I don't know. I'm trying. There it is.
There it is. Yes.
It's in and out, fading in and out. Well, your impact's not fading in and out. So really appreciate it, Joe. I know the council joins me as your staff does as well in the community. So congratulations. And yeah, we all sure hope you go and enjoy retirement. Most people I know with your experience and your need for some time off, take it. The next thing you know, 6 months later, they're back figuring out a way to help out again. So, but hopefully you'll get to do whatever it is you want to do. So with that, yeah, go ahead and say a few words.
Sure. And, and the staff doesn't need to feel obligated to say anything. There's going to be some other send-offs that we're going to have. So, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for your kind words. I've enjoyed working with all of you, getting to know you. As you've indicated, I've lived and worked in some beautiful communities, and I'm so happy to have found Redondo Beach and for Redondo Beach to have found me. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years. When I first was hired here on an interim basis, I was kind of in the job search mode, and I thought I'd be here maybe 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. And, it just kind of, it's just kind of, you can't really plan things out exactly the way you think they're going to work out. And so I'm happy that I've been here. I want to thank all of you for your service. I'm always impressed with those of you that serve in elective office. I get paid. This is my profession. You're doing this on a part-time basis, technically on a part-time limited pay basis, but I know that it's more for some of you than a part-time job. So thank you for your service. I've enjoyed working with you. I enjoyed my time with Mayor Jen, with Mayor Aspel, with City Attorney Webb, City Treasurer Deal, City Clerk Manzano. All the staff have been great to work with. Department heads, as you've indicated, most of them were part of the team that I brought on. Those that haven't been mentioned that were here when I joined, they're also excellent employees. I've been so fortunate to have a great team that I could trust and rely on. And I think the staff really proved their value, and our work took on kind of additional importance during the past couple of years as we dealt with the pandemic, as we dealt with the threat of civil unrest and all the associated budget challenges. It hasn't been an easy few years in terms of our budget, and COVID certainly didn't help. But things are on the way up. I appreciate the comments about my family. The best decision I ever made was to convince my wife to get married to me. She's not on this session. I've done an excellent job of keeping her away from meetings like this. She hasn't been to a city council meeting in my 35 years of work, and I'm very proud of that. Yeah, we will travel. We live in Long Beach. I've got 2 grown kids. Someone said to me that the first third of your life, you're learning. The second third of your life, you're earning. And the last third of your life, you're returning. So I'm going to find some things to be busy with. I'm going to volunteer. Don't really plan to go back to work. But, a lot of people unretire and they retire multiple times. So I'm ruling that out. This is the last time that I'll appear before you at a city council meeting. I'm going to be logging off after this. So I want to thank all of you again. Wish you all the best of health, the best of happiness, and great success in the future. So Thank you all.
Thank you, Joe. And yeah, we all wish you quite well, and enjoy your time off and your retirement. You certainly earned it. So thank you. And with that, I guess we'll move on to our next proclamation. I have one here. No one here tonight could make it, but again, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we always give them a proclamation, and they always have a wonderful vigil right in front of City Hall, which is this Saturday. Somebody help me with the time. I think it's 7 o'clock.
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
I think so.
Okay, well, it's this Saturday. I don't want to give anybody the wrong time. So if you're interested, and it's a great event, and Redondo Beach has a great service that we provide. It's unique to the South Bay, and it addresses, domestic violence. And our police, you go right along, you're guaranteed to get a domestic violence call, unfortunately. So we got a little proclamation here. We do that every year. And we have a great organization here in Redondo Beach, led by Erica, who can make it tonight. But I'll just read it just to educate people a little bit. This is a proclamation we have here. Can you see that? I don't think you can, really. Oh, there you go, a little bit. Anyway, haven't done this in a while, and this is probably why, because it's hard to come out. But I'll read it anyway. Whereas home should be a place of warmth, unconditional love, tranquility, and security. However, for many people, it is tainted with fear and violence. And whereas an estimated 1 to 4 million women and 160,000 men are physically, sexually, or emotionally abused by their every year. And whereas 50 million children are exposed to violence by family members each year, and children who witness domestic violence display emotional and behavioral disturbances such as withdrawal, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, and violence toward peers. And whereas men and women who are abused as children are more likely to perpetuate the cycle of violence in their own relationships, and whereas a coalition of organizations has launched a concerted effort to confront this crisis, including the Redondo Beach City Attorney's Office, Beach City's Health District, and the Redondo Beach Police Department Domestic Violence Victim Advocacy Program. That's what's unique to Redondo Beach, is we have a domestic violence victim advocacy program that works very closely with our police department. So when they get a call, the Domestic Violence Victim Advocacy Program gets a call, so they can go out there and provide services. Whereas this coalition is helping to educate the community and raise awareness of the problem of domestic violence and the resources available to help those in abusive or violent relationships. Now, therefore, I, Bill Brand, the mayor, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of October Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and applaud the work being done in the community to combat domestic violence, and urge all citizens to know the signs of domestic violence and the resources available to help families and children suffering abuse. So again, that's Saturday. I saw somebody put it up.
Yeah, 7 p.m. Mayor, Councilman Obaji just posted our website posting. It will be 7 p.m. on Saturday.
That's this Saturday. It's outside. It's always extremely touching. Sorry, I won't be there this year, but I know many others will, and the police will be there, and you know, people with testimonies will be there. It's a great event. So I encourage everyone to go this Saturday at 7 o'clock, right in front of City Hall. So thank you for that, Councilmember Obaji. So moving along, let's go to any announcements from our council. Councilmember Naranat.
I do. I got a couple of announcements, actually. So as we're slowly getting back to a little bit of normalcy here in everyday life, the Riviera Village Business Improvement District down there in Riviera Village is putting back their spectacular event on Sunday, October 31st from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Open to everyone. Come on down. They're blocking off the streets. Wear your costumes. The businesses will be giving out some free candy. It's always a fantastic event. Police and fire are there saying hello. So come on down for that. Let's see here. Keep the SMOD beautiful. They're getting back together again for their first sweep in, man, a year and a half. So November 6th, I believe the date is, they will be meeting at Saks on the beach, which is on Avenue I and Catalina. Come on down for that. I believe that's at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 9 a.m., 9 a.m. So they're gonna do a little bit of a cleanup down there on the beach. They also have a new director of the program. That's Jeff Ginsburg. He's taken over the group. So that's really cool. They got some changes there. They're going to do some planting of native plants in Revere Village and some residential housing over there, residential areas, a little bit that's left. So that's a nice big change. And then the last thing to say that final game, Dodgers 6-5. So they just won at home. Other than that, that's it.
Game over.
Game over. Yeah, 9th inning, just finished.
All right. Sorry to miss it. Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, I have two announcements. The first of which is the next District 2 community meeting be held next Monday, October the 25th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. My special guest will be Jonathan Spetko, who is on the Cannabis Steering Committee. We'll be hearing about his efforts on the committee, recommendations, also a discussion about the initiative that's circling the city for signatures. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I hope people join, give their input. It's really important as we go and perhaps craft an ordinance in order to regulate the sale of cannabis in our community. The second thing is earlier today, I was joined by Mayor Brand, council members Narenheim, Horvath, Obaji, and City Attorney Webb in talking to the State Water Board, trying to convince them to keep from extending the operations of the AS power plant another 2 years to December 31st, 2023. And unfortunately, by a vote of 5-0, they extended the operations. And it's incredibly demoralizing for all of us. I don't know anybody, right-minded person who doesn't want that thing shut down. And it seems like the State Water Board doesn't want to listen. The only people they'd listen to are the California Public Utilities Commission, California Independent Systems Operator, any of the utilities, and money. Money just sways a lot of people in terms of influence and lobbyists. And, all the people that wrote in, they called in. I really want to thank you for all the efforts. I know maybe Mayor Brandon will address this later, but the fight goes on. We're going to continue this fight to get this thing shut down once and for all. It's certainly not for lack of trying. It's certainly not for lack of trying to come to an agreement, but the field goal, the posts keep moving back and back for us. And we want this thing shut down. It's it's horrible for our health, the environment, and also for our waterfront in terms of light. So, we got to keep our chins up, keep fighting, and keep writing in. So thank you all for your support, and fight goes on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Brand. My community meeting will be this Thursday night from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Virtually. My special guest will be retiring City Manager Joe Hefkin. And we'll just be kind of looking back on his 10 years here, and then also just taking any concerns and questions kind of in an open forum perspective from the audience. And then one other event is going on this Saturday. Our household hazardous waste event is happening at the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center. I think it's from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you have stuff you need to get rid of, get there on the early side, because once their trucks fill up, I think they have to turn you away. But it's a great event. It's really quick and easy. You just put everything in your trunk or your back seat, and they will just take it out, and it's quick and fast. That's it.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
All right, a few announcements. First and foremost, I've got to thank our police department, because somehow District 4 always gets the fleeing criminals. But there was a domestic abuse suspect who, abused in Hermosa and then ran away from police, ran into District 4, got in a traffic collision, and then he climbed out of his car and away from police and into a tree. At which point the police cordoned off the whole block, including mine. And I was impressed with how patient they were as they just sat out and waited. And then a canine team found the man in a tree. And I was impressed. Like even when I left my house, they checked my trunk to make sure he wasn't hiding in there. So they're absolute professionals, and I give them kudos for that. And I say that I say the specifics of the story just so the city council members also recognize how important the various resources that our police have are, including our K-9 teams. So thank you, police, for that. I also want to thank Public Works because we've been having an increased incidence of a graffiti and disturbing graffiti at that, which we'll discuss later in referrals with staff in our district. And they've been on top of cleaning it up as quickly as humanly possible, on top of all their other work. So it's been occurring at Perry Park and even at some private places, and that's not okay. I will have a community meeting to discuss all the foregoing plus more. Cannabis, I might even get the initiative advancers on for that. That's October 28th. The Zoom link should be on my profile probably tomorrow because our executive assistant is out today. But it'll be at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. If you don't have the link, just email me zo@redondo.org. And it'll of course be live streamed on Facebook. And finally, I want to say thank you to the mayor, council members Horvath, Narenheim, and Lowenstein, and city attorney Mike Webb for really a strong presentation. I mean, our city was very well represented, as was Hermosa Beach, before the water board, but they did not listen to a single thing we said. So, but thank you for being united in that respect. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Councilmember MD.
Thank you, Christian, for mentioning the household hazardous waste this Saturday, but there's also going to be paper shredding just at the same time from 8 a.m. to 2. And he's right, once the truck is full, it goes away. So make sure you go down there to the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center. They have it well organized and it is open to Redondo residents. And thank you to Mr. Obagi for mentioning the domestic violence. I also felt it was kind of a weird coincidence that this incident happened right in the middle of a domestic violence month. And I highly encourage anyone who can go the Saturday, the 23rd. You really do learn a lot of how innovative that program is and how well our police are able to handle the diversity of needs in this community with utmost professionalism, with volunteers, with kindness and patience and all that was mentioned as well. There was a bill that passed in the last couple of weeks, which affects our military families. One of the problems when military families are going from state to state is that the spouses who are not in the military that are licensed in something, whether it's a teacher or engineering, some kind of engineering license of the like, it's not transferable from state to state. So the state of California has passed a law in which they will accept out-of-state licenses in a kind of probationary temporary basis until they can be in line with California licenses. And that's going to be a huge help for families that are moving from the different states so that the spouses can still work. So hurrah to everyone that worked on that bill and getting it passed. Mr. Elmer Tsuchi was very instrumental in that, as was the South Bay Aerospace Alliance. And so thank you to everybody who passed that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember MD. We talked a lot about domestic violence awareness and, we have services here. I guess you got to first say, never hesitate to dial 911. But if you want to report something more offline, you can dial 310-379-5411. So yeah, just so you know, there are services there and that's how you reach it. So like everyone else, I was at the water board hearing today and it wasn't surprising for them to extend the power plant operation another 2 years. The most worrisome out of that meeting, besides that they extended it 2 years, is they talked about more extensions coming. And they absolutely set the table for more extensions. While they talk about, we don't want to do this again. They said that last year. And it was kind of funny. Their staff, both at the PUC and at their own staff, warned them that these renewed extensions will be coming forward 2 years from now. And then the board proceeded to talk about how they don't want to see this anymore. So there's a lot of game playing going on there. And I really think this whole thing's being driven by CAISO and the Energy Commission and the Public Utilities Commission. It's a shame. So they're really the ones who have failed. And yeah, California has not met their goals, and they continue to extend them, and it's a shame. And you should make it clear to your state reps, wherever you are, that they should be holding their regulators and their administrators and yeah, feet to the fire to do what they said they would do. They set these deadlines. So we've just been planning around them. So if you get the opportunity to talk to anybody about it, say, why are we failing in that department? And it's important what people say when they run into their state legislators. But I think our state legislators are on board and as frustrated as everybody else. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the rest of the agenda items. I guess we'll start with order of agenda. Did anyone have anything they wanted to move around, or is there a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as is.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Narenheim, seconded by Councilmember Imdy. Any discussion? Any objections? Any ideas? Okay, so ordered. Next up, blue folder items. I know we have blue folder items for tonight. Did you want to go through those, Vicki?
So we have 4 blue folders before you with materials. Item H17, we have the administrative report, First Amendment to Agreement for Legal Services with Strumwasser and Wucher, and budget modification resolution. Under J1, we have a public communication. Under non-agenda items. Under N1, we have the PowerPoint presentation, and under P1, we have a resolution.
Okay, is there a motion to admit those to the record?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Lowenstein, I believe. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, there you go. Those are admitted to the record. Next up is our consent calendar. And tonight we have 17 items on consent. We vote on these all at once unless a council member or somebody asks to have an item pulled. Any member of the public can comment on any item. So with that, I'll go down the council and see if anybody wants to pull any items. Councilmember Narenheim.
I would like to pull item H9, please. Let me make sure that's what I wanted. Yeah, H9.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Obaji.
No, thank you.
And Councilmember MD.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Vicki, is there any member from the public like to comment on any consent calendar item other than H9?
We have 2 members present from the public, but they are actually representing the vendor or the lessee. So they said that they would only speak if it was needed. So I don't see their hands up, and I don't see any questions for item H13 or H15. They indicate that they would only speak if needed.
Okay, well, thank you for showing up. But with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, excuse me. I am very sorry. I do have a
E-comment, right? Yeah. Okay.
right under H15.
Yep.
Submitted
Yeah,
by
sure.
Michael Martin. As noted in the administrative report for item H15, the lender request for estoppel certificate is in part to receive assurance that all obligations under the lease have been satisfied, but that is not totally true. Lease section 54 in compliance with Coastal Commission Development Permit 5-05-245 provides under item B, lessee shall reserve 2 slips within the marina for exclusive use by nonprofit equal opportunity sailing club deemed acceptable by the executive director of the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission has no record of ever being approached on this, much less of deeming the city of Redondo Beach, the slip assignee since 2007, to be a nonprofit sailing club. In my opinion, transparent and scrupulous adherence to Coastal Commission agreements is the best city policy in general, and I recommend that the city simply enforces mandated lease provision as clearly written. And that concludes comments for consent agenda tonight.
Okay, well, with that, I'd like to pull item H15.
Yeah, second that.
And anyone else? Any more items? More comments? Okay.
Listen,
With that, I'll entertain a motion to pull any item other than H, or to pass the consent calendar other than items H9 and H15.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Narenheim. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, do you need to read some things there, Vicky?
I do. Under item H6, council adopted by title only resolution number CC-2110097, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, California, appointing an advisory board in connection with the Riviera Village Business Improvement District and directing the preparation of a report for fiscal year 2022. Also adopted by title only, resolution number CC-2110-098, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, California, approving the report of the advisory board for fiscal year 2022 in connection with the Riviera Village Business Improvement District. Adopted by title only, also resolution number CC-2110-099, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, California, declaring its intention to levy an assessment against businesses within the Riviera Village Business Improvement District for fiscal year 2022 and setting a time and place for hearing objections thereto. And I believe also too, under item H17, council adopted by 4/5 vote and by title only resolution CC-2110-101, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, California, modifying the budget for fiscal year 2021-22 to appropriate $130,000 from the PERS Reserve Fund to create a project account for the legal expenses associated with city's various action opposing state efforts to limit local land use authority. And that concludes resolutions and ordinances under consent.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Item H9, Councilmember Narenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. Yeah, can I add someone from, I think Joe Hoffman? I got a couple questions on this. You know, when we approved this item back in March of 2019, I think it was when we approved it. You know, one of the things I saw was that this what do you call it? This item was already happening on the survey. Excuse me, the survey was happening on Facebook and a couple other places. We're spending a good chunk of money, $40,000, $41,000 on survey software. And, you know, I've talked about this with Chief Kaufman, and one of the concerns I had and information I have is we're doing these surveys and we as a council aren't getting the feedback loop for me isn't really closing, meaning a lot of the information isn't coming back to us, number one. Number two is I want to understand and the public understand how when we do these surveys and we see them on Facebook and on the other places, how the city reacts to the information that's being given out or taken in, I should say, by the survey. So Joe, if you could hit on those couple of topics and maybe about how we could get in the kind of executive brief, so to speak, once a year on this, or a report somewhere along the way to help educate us during the budget making process if we need to spend resources somewhere more or less, because the pie is only so big.
Sure, and I apologize, my camera's not working, but I do have the audio. So we're using a variety of sources to try to maintain proactivity with the way that we're conducting law enforcement. We're using a company called Spider Tech, and we still are for a while, which was giving us some information from the public. But with that, it was only people that had called the police. And we were getting valuable information, but we were missing a significant component. When Zen City, it was originally Elucid, is the company that we started with. They were doing public opinion polling and just asked general questions. Do you feel safe? What is a top concern? Very general questions. The nice thing about this survey is it wasn't people that had called the police. So they use some algorithms that are targeting people that are inside the City of Redondo Beach boundary, but we're getting information from people that haven't necessarily called us. What we're finding with the surveys with people that were responding to calls for service is they may have been in a car accident or a victim of a crime, and the information was according to those types of calls for service, where this was really raw information about what are people concerned about. And then we couple that with our crime analysis data, and we're trying to take as much data as we can to use that to proactively deploy the resources that we have available. And we're consistently seeing items like streets and traffic, homelessness, theft, and burglaries as our top 3 items, which we've used that data to expand our traffic unit. We have more motor officers now than we did a couple of years ago. We've obviously dedicated a lot more officers to our quality of life unit and working with homeless individuals in DMH. And we've also dedicated more resources to working with burglaries and thefts with our special investigations unit and detectives, and coordinating with the city prosecutor's office for prosecuting the misdemeanor offenses as well. We could absolutely, this contract now is 1 year, and there is an option to extend it, but we would be coming back to council prior to that. And with any future request for council to consider a contract, we could absolutely provide an executive summary that went over a year of the data that showed an accumulation of the data and the types of information that we were getting. It's really broken down into a variety of categories, including race, age, education, income, and sex of the respondents for trust and safety scoring. And it's interesting to watch the correlation between those categories and what's going on, not necessarily in Redondo Beach or even in the South Bay or even in California, but affecting law enforcement across the nation and how we can respond to that. Sometimes it's by a public education campaign and promoting certain aspects of what we're doing on social media. And other times it's just with educating our employees on what we're seeing on these on a daily basis, and then making more people aware so that the types of comments that they may be receiving and how to respond. So really what we're using this as a tool to just try to maintain as proactive of a stance as possible as we deploy our resources. We get a lot of information. We probably get, 5 to 10 emails a week from Zen City that include various data, information that's going out over social media, the daily reports, monthly executive summaries, and it would be a lot of data to filter through. We could provide that data as requested and definitely include a summary report that shows that what we've collected if this contract were to be approved.
Yeah, I'm not looking for the granular data. We don't have the time for that. I'm looking for executive, like kind of overall briefing and information so we know how things are going. One of the things I said to Chief Kaufman in public here is that we as electeds hear one side of the story from usually the same group of people, 10% or 15% of people, and we kind of gauge issues off of those those groups of people. But you're getting a whole different set of information, and it's good that we're being proactive and that we're changing our services proactively, and people understand that when I saw this come through, and I had a good conversation with Chief Kaufman about this, that we're not doing the same services we were doing 6 months ago or a year ago or 2 years ago. But at the same time, is the public needs to know that we're collecting this information. What information what are we doing with it? So yeah, I would love to get some of that information, and I would also love to get educate the public on it as well, so they know that we're moving forward in a proactive fashion. Also, I think Zane's gonna ask. I see value in other departments and other areas, but I want to be very judicious to how we do that, because us electeds, I could have told you traffic and vehicle safety, pedestrian safety is number one. And I can also tell you that homelessness is number two. I could just tell you that from being elected. So I'd be very judicious about how we do this. We don't want to turn this into, we just want to start pulling around on everything. So I do see great intense value on this, but I also just want to make sure that we're careful on this. And just so everyone knows, this is the second time we're signing this contract. There is no other company that's doing this, from what I've been told, in the way that Zen City is doing this. So there is no other competitive bidding, so to speak. So those are my comments on this, and I'll leave the floor to Councilmember Obaji.
And if I could just briefly, Councilman Darrenheim, before we hear from Zane, we are big fans of this survey work and what it allows us to do and our dynamic response to community policing. But we want to, over the next year, evaluate the propensity to expand this, as you mentioned, to perhaps other areas of services in the community and allow us to maybe make improvements in some of our other departments. So we like this. We used to have a opinion and a survey function out of the city manager's office years ago when we had more expanded resources. And we'll look to try to restore that if funding permits. But this is a contract we see a lot of value in.
Thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Obaji.
Right. Yeah. So as Councilmember Narrenheim said, I wanted to pull this, but then I talked to the chief, and it wasn't because I have any kind of disdain for the collection of information. I think it's actually great because it's voluntary, it's sent out, and it gets feedback. I wanted to see it expanded, and I could see it expanded in a number of ways. First, if somebody submits an Access Redondo request, I think you guys call it by something else in the city, but then after they submit it, let's say a week later, they get a survey asking, hey, how is your request dealt with? That would be great. Another thing could be every time the city sends out this request, the police department, they just inform people, hey, did you know about Access Redondo for reporting non-emergency city issues? You know, because people don't know. I literally had yesterday a resident call me because there's graffiti at the Dollar Tree. And she was prepared to go take, it was on double white doors. She was prepared to go take a paint can to go clean up the graffiti. And she had called. It had been about a week, but she just didn't know about Access Redondo. And I've been finding that residents feel satisfied when they submit something on Access Redondo, it gets dealt with. So if we could expand adoption of that, then we have kind of a system by which residents could report things to the city, they get addressed, and we can also understand what are the recurring issues in the city and where they are arising. So that's where I could see this becoming very valuable, including by the police making people aware, since they're adopting it currently with their initial outreach. Hey, did you know about Access Redondo? So those are my 2 cents. I think there's agreement. I heard, Mike, that you're on board with expanding this if it's possible. So I'm okay with passing this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, collection of information is great. I was taken a little bit aback by the cost going forward annually every year. We've done surveys several times. I haven't done one in a long time, the city council, but it's extremely valuable and I'm in favor of expanding it. I thought $40,000 every single year was a bit on the rich side, expensive wise. But yeah, if the council supports doing this, then there you have it. More information is always a good thing. And, you know, real-time dynamic info that you can respond to is extremely valuable. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I just want to, you know, I see that kind of money being spent. I want to make sure it's you know, expanded. I think by a little bit, we probably, for a little bit more money, we could probably include some other departments. So, but I know the police want to have their focused on that. So, yeah, we'll have to talk about it going forward. So it was good to hear, Mike, you talk about how we can expand it, as Councilmember Obaji said.
Yeah, and Mayor, I might add as well, this was specifically in mind with the decision package you all approved and appropriated ongoing contractual services money to the police department for activities like this. You know, we have drone programs, some of the more innovative things we've done over the last years, we funded on a one-time basis. You all made the commitment to dedicate funding towards this endeavor and others in policing on a go-forward basis. So we're covered financially. But as I said, I do think, and you've all repeated, there's I think potential here for us to gain even greater value in this contract by expanding it throughout the community. So,
yeah. And I know that the city council has not done a survey in a very long time. So I think next budget season, we should consider our own survey for a variety of city issues, as we all know. So, okay, is there a motion? Any more comment? Did I miss anybody? Councilmember Narrenheim, are you done?
I was going to say I make a motion. I agree with you on the price and the cost. We need to, you know, be careful in this. And this is one of the reasons why I pulled it. I saw it. So I totally agree with you on that. I will make a motion to approve item H9 pending public input.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any public input on this, Vicky?
No, sir, there is not.
Okay, great. There's a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Do you need to read this, Vicky? I don't think so.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Yeah, thank you. Next item is H15. I hope Stephen Proud's available to address this. Anyway, great. Stephen, could you just kind of go through, I mean, what's an estoppel? People don't know what an estoppel is. They don't, know the terms of leasing and how we do things and then what this is about.
Sure. So generally in our leasing program, some of our lessees will go out and seek financing or refinancing of loans that they have. And as part of the lending program, the lender will typically ask for something called an estoppel certificate and consent to deed of trust. And what we're really doing in providing the estoppel certificate is attesting to the lender that the terms of the lease have been complied with. So we make sure that the tenant is up on their rent, that they've paid all their security deposits, that they generally aren't in default on any of the provisions that are set forth in their lease. The Portofino Hotel went through a refinancing in June, the beginning of June, and we brought an estoppel certificate to you and you approved that estoppel certificate. They have subsequently, as a result of COVID, found a secondary lender that they are now looking to move the loan to, which is Goldman Sachs. And so what they're looking for is an amended and updated estoppel certificate to support that further assignment of this loan from their current lender to Goldman Sachs. The public comment you received tonight is really related to a provision of the lease that falls into a section that's called additional marina requirements. And under that section of the lease, what it says is that once the construction of the marina renovation was completed in 2006, the lessee, which is the Portofino Hotel, would reserve 2 slips within the marina for exclusive use by a nonprofit equal opportunity sailing club deemed acceptable by the executive director of the Coastal Commission in consultation with the city of Redondo Beach. And since the lease was completed and during my entire tenure with the city, I haven't had any issues associated with this particular provision until this year, when there was an organization called the Redondo Beach Sailing Club who came to us really through the Harbor Commission and wanted to talk to us about the use of those 2 slips. What's been happening and what the practice has been is the city of Redondo Beach, as part of our sailing program that's run through our Recreation and Parks Department and Community Services, has been using the slips in the Portofino Marina to store a couple of their vessels. And I think that has generally been acceptable to the community because the members of the Redondo Beach Sailing Club had a loose affiliation with our sailing program, whereby they would have the opportunity to use those vessels when they weren't being used for sailing instruction. That relationship changed last year, whereby the sailing club no longer had that same affiliation with the sailing program. And the director of the Redondo Beach Sailing Club contacted me, Mr. Martin, contacted me about the use of those slips. I met Mr. Martin down at the Portofino. We walked the docks. I had an opportunity to see the vessels that were parked there. And what I told him at the time was, you were just about to begin your budget deliberations. And I indicated to him that you were going to have a BBR that was related to our sailing program, which you may recall. And as part of your budget motion that was adopted, you actually asked staff to come back and further discuss the sailing program. And so what I've told Mr. Martin, and I've communicated this to him in a couple of emails since we met, was that we were going to be in a bit of a holding pattern until the city council had a chance to discuss the city's sailing program, and then we could decide what would be the best course of action related to those 2 slips that are articulated in the Portofino lease. So we're aware of it. I think we just wanted to hear the deliberations related to our own sailing program and then determine what the best course of action was from that point forward. But like I said, this hadn't really been an issue for the first 14 years of the lease, and I think it's just materialized because of this break between the relationship between the Redondo Beach Sailing Club and the Redondo Beach Instructional Sailing Program.
Okay, so there are 2 slips dedicated to nonprofit use?
Well, there are 2 slips that are currently used by the city to house our instructional sailing vessels. So they have not been assigned to a nonprofit entity. So I think that's what Mr. Martin's concern is that we're using those slips as opposed to them being assigned to a nonprofit organization that provides equal opportunity sailing program. And like I said, there hadn't been an issue with that because I think the Redondo Beach Sailing Club felt like they fit that description. But once they no longer had access to those vessels, they brought it to our attention and said, hey, we think the city needs to step in and force the Portofino Hotel to now put those slips into use with a new nonprofit entity that provides that equal opportunity sailing program. We're perfectly willing and happy to do that. Our only hesitation had been we wanted you to finish your deliberations regarding the Redondo Beach Sailing Program and the budget implications before we did that. That's the only reason we haven't.
And Stephen, though, to put a finer point on it, as it pertains to the estoppel and consent to deed of trust,
we don't think they're enough
clearly complying. Right, they're clearly complying with the lease. It's really up to us as a city to decide which not-for-profit, which a city program would qualify under the federal and state standards is most appropriate to use those slips. So Portofino's in compliance. It's really up to us to determine who's going to be in that area.
Yeah, good point. And I meant to say that we did not feel that was a condition of default or something that was amiss in the lease obligation, because it really was the city of Redondo Beach in consultation with the Coastal Commission to make that determination.
Well, that was my question. I perused the lease. I didn't see this in there. Was this something the Coastal Commission?
It's Mr. Mayor, it took me a little bit to find it too. The first time it came to my attention, it's actually section 54. It's the very last section in the lease titled additional marina requirements. And it's subsection B under section 54, where it talks about this particular provision.
Page 77. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're in compliance.
It's not something we typically find in our leases. So when Mr. Martin brought it to my attention, I had to do a little digging myself to find it in the body of the lease.
Well, that's
I think Mayor, in this case, we would suggest that Portofino's in compliance with their lease under the terms, that the estoppel should be granted. What I think we have to do as a follow-up matter, and Cameron will be covering this in his presentation to you all as part of the referral that was made during the budget to come back and talk about the city's sailing program. I think we have to decide where are we going longer term with regards to utilization of these 2 slips. Certainly the sailing program has benefited from these slips and the free rent that comes from it. As you all know, marina property is a premium and it costs quite a bit of money. It bears an additional expense on anybody that uses and rents slips. So we'll be talking about that in Cameron's item, but we strongly feel the estoppel should be granted given the circumstance.
Agreed.
And when is that item coming up?
I think we're targeting next month. I don't know, Cameron, do we have a specific date yet?
Yeah, we're hard at work at it right now. At the latest, second meeting in November, hoping for first, but want to make sure we have it buttoned up before we bring it to you.
Okay. Well, kudos to Mr. Martin for finding that needle in the haystack. That's impressive. I will say, going back all the way to 2006, I was paying attention when they did this lease, and the Portofino Partners, or whatever they're called now, did a fantastic job refurbishing that lease, redeveloping that lease. Everything they've done with the hotel and the docks and their compliance with everything has really been top notch and first class, as was prescribed in the lease. They invested, I think it was $9.5 million way back in 2006, and they would probably say it's been a lot more than that. So for those of you here representing Portofino, I acknowledge your adherence to everything, and just thank you for the great work you've done down there.
Yeah, and Mr. Jake O'Donohue, who is the CEO for Noble House, is one of our attendees. So, he's available if you have a question, but, otherwise, you're ready to move forward with the estoppel certificate.
Yeah, I guess it was Noble House, and it still is. Jake, did you want to make any comments or got any thoughts?
No, I just wanted Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for the kind words, and to Stephen and Mike for the support. We've been in the leasehold for 33 plus years. We love the city of Redondo Beach. We love everything you're doing, and we support the council, and we appreciate all the hard work you put in. As you know, we did redo the marina in 2007, and it's been a great success, and we like to support nonprofits, and we've been working with Stephen, as he said, for 14 years with these 2 slips. And we will continue to do that and do the right thing going forward. We love being part of the city. It's a great asset.
Great. Well, thanks for showing up. And, we're happy, and apparently you guys are happy, and it's been a great partnership. And it's like, I think the lease goes to 2061 or something.
Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. Yes, thank you.
How are you guys doing? How's the hotel? Is everything rebounding now?
It's coming back not as fast as we'd like, but we're very, very impressed with the business that has come back thus far, and we're looking for social and catering and group to layer back in as things progress with vaccination and travel.
Okay. Well, we're always here to help however we can, and I know we can count on you. So thank you.
You guys are great, and we're well supported, and we appreciate that support every day.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks again for coming. Is there any more public comment on this? Any hands up? I don't see hands up. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Narenheim. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, great. Well, it takes care of our consent calendar. There you go. So next up is public participation on non-agenda items. This is the opportunity for the public to speak about anything that is not on the agenda. Everybody's got 3 minutes. So do we have anybody signed up tonight? Vicky?
Actually, the only person that signed up did not give us an item was Holly Osborne, and she has not raised her hand. So she has that opportunity to do so. I can read the e-comment that's been submitted in the meanwhile.
Sure.
Okay, great. Submitted by Leslie Campeggi. Testimony today to the State Water Board regarding the AES Redondo power plant was outstanding. It was clear the board was simply going to rubber stamp their staff report from the get-go. That said, the city of Redondo Beach was well represented and articulated the pertinent issues that any other unbiased entity would have had difficulty ignoring. It was a wonderful showing of the knowledge base of our city electeds and those we've hired to aid in this effort. Thank you, Mayor Brand, Councilmember Narenheim, Councilmember Lowenstein, Councilmember Horvath, and City Attorney for your Herculean efforts for years and especially today. Residents Eugene Solomon and Deidre Brand were equally impressive. Thanks to Councilmembers Stacy Armato and Raymond Jackson of Hermosa Beach for their testimony, as well as our Assembly Member Al Morisucci for participating in today's hearing as well. There were far more than this, as well as those who wrote to the Water Board. Be proud of your excellent voices, and thank you for all for doing your best to make a difference. At some point, the AES Redondo power plant will go away, hopefully being permanently retired at the end of this latest extension in December 2023.
Okay, thank you for that. Those are very kind and insightful words.
That concludes public comment.
Okay, well, that was quick. All right. First up is item number N1, discussion and possible action regarding a status report on the condition of restrooms in the Pier Harbor area. Ted Simon, our Public Works Director. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. As requested by the council, we're here to provide you some insight on the efforts and the operations of the pier area, especially our restroom maintenance effort that's been there. Joining me tonight are going to be Rob Osborne, our Senior Management Analyst, who will be giving you a presentation shortly, as well as Gary Lalagi, who is the manager of the Pier and Harbor area, and Robert Rivera, who's the area supervisor for that. So with that, Rob, I know you've got a presentation to share.
Thanks, Ted. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And let's go. Okay. Thank you, Ted. I think Ted introduced it well there. This was requested by the council a couple meetings ago. There was some concern about the overall conditions of the restroom and the cleanliness. I believe we've gotten a couple of complaints from some visitors to the pier. So what we'd like to do is go through a little bit of our what we do typically to maintain restrooms, and mainly on the custodial side. And then we'll talk a little bit about some upcoming enhancement projects that we have to improve the restrooms. So starting out with 7 sets of restrooms, going through them quickly. First one at the base of the pier. This is right where the the bike path comes through near the food court. Second one, the Mondstadt Pier out by the fishing area on the old pier. Pad 10, right where the new skateboarding area is. And then 2 on the boardwalk. One is near Quality Seafood, and one is in the middle of the boardwalk near the slip bar. And then 2 in the parking structures, one in Plaza Parking, which is up above Naja's Place. And then the last one is in parking structure 1, sort of tucked away in the center of the structure. So I'll go through a little bit about what we do for a typical custodial service. So we go through each restroom typically a total of 4 to 5 times a day. The first service in the morning is what we call a thorough service, where we go through everything. And see the things that are listed here. Basically, we hit everything: the toilets, all the surfaces, the mirrors, replenishing all the products, emptying the trash, cleaning and polishing, sweeping and mopping, removing any or reporting any graffiti to our maintenance staff, and then reporting any damaged fixtures. So again, this is done once every day, a thorough service, typically first thing in the morning. Then moving on to our what we call a refresh or restock service. This is what we do 3 to 4 times a day. Obviously, as there's use during the day, we can't leave the restrooms in the good condition they started, because they don't stay that way. So this is a quicker service. We go through, refill, replace anything that's run out with the soap and paper products, sweep and mop the floors, and empty the trash. The hours of the restrooms, they open early in the morning, a little after 5 o'clock. And then they close at different times depending on summer. It's depending on the season. Sorry, the winter time, it's later. 9:45, and during the busy season, April through October, it's 11:15. In addition, I wanted to talk a little bit about. We've recently done a trial, a pilot program with some supplemental custodial services. We have a limited budget for part-time staff to supplement our full-time workers. So what we found this year during the summer concert series, we received a few complaints about the condition of the restrooms due to the extremely heavy usage from the concerts attracting good crowds down there. So we didn't have any resources left, personnel resources to bump up the number of services. So we contracted with Leonardo, who's our property manager for a lot of the areas down at the pier. And we hired some of their custodians to come in on an hourly basis, typically 2 per night. To supplement what we do, and we found this to be very effective. So we continue this. We're actually still doing it now in October, but we expect to be shutting it down pretty soon. In addition to the custodial services, we do a variety of skilled maintenance and repairs. You see a picture of one of our guys in action there, fixing a urinal. All types of things in the neighborhood in the categories plumbing, electrical, painting, and carpentry. This is typically done on an as-needed basis as things wear out or need to be replaced. So as far as talking about restroom enhancements, there's a number of things that we've done recently, and we've got a number of things that are coming up. So I'll go through each restroom with a little bit of a summary. So starting with the photo on the left, these are the restrooms at the base of the pier. We've got a project coming up in November. We'll be replacing all the sinks and toilets and lights and doors, and also repainting. This is something we'll do in-house with our public works crews. And then on the right there, the small restroom out on the fishing pier, there's a comprehensive CIP coming up that we're going to do a complete renovation. The plans and specs were approved by the council back in August, and we just closed bidding at the end of last week. We received 3 bids, which we're taking a look at now, and should be coming back to you sometime in November with either a recommendation to award a contract or, if necessary, to rebid. Next set of restrooms at Pad 10, the skateboarding area. These restrooms are in pretty good shape. We have recently replaced the doors and repainted last year, and that's all that we have planned at this point. As I said, they're in the pictures, I think, show they're in pretty good shape. The boardwalk, start with the ones by Quality Seafood. We replaced the entry doors and repainted these restrooms last year. We do have a problem with these restrooms in that the space is really limited and we can't meet ADA requirements. There's just not enough room in the current footprint. So the council did set aside some funding for us to a study to try to come up with a plan, either to find some more space or expand the restrooms one way or another so that there is enough room for the ADA requirements. So that will be something we'll be bringing back to you a little bit down the road. The other set of restrooms on the boardwalk, this is more in the middle area there by the slip bar. We've repainted the exteriors. I think you can see there in the photos. And then in November, we'll be coming back in to repaint the interiors. And the last two sets of restrooms on the left, the plaza parking, again, this is the one up above the boardwalk. Were repainted just recently, and we will be replacing the doors and some of the fixtures in the restrooms coming up in this spring to make sure we have it ready for the busy season next year. And then finally on the right, parking structure number 1, sorry, my photos have moved a little bit. We will be replacing some of the entry doors and toilets, and that is coming up shortly as well. As far as funding available, the council made $400,000 available for pier restroom upgrades as part of the fiscal year budget. $100,000 was dedicated to the base of pier restrooms, $200,000 to the international boardwalk, and $100,000 to pad 10. And then we have an existing CIP for the Mondstadt Pier. This is the one where we just had bids closed, and there is $250,000 available for that. So that concludes the presentation. Recommendation is to receive and file. And as Ted mentioned, we have our manager and supervisor oversee the day-to-day operations, ready to answer any questions.
And if I could, Mayor, just before we move into council comments, wanted to just remind you all, we know that this is a priority for the council. Restroom improvements are a big part of our capital plan. We're committed to it. We've heard the complaints from not only our business owners, but patrons of the pier. Several of you all who walk the pier regularly have continually referred concerns on this matter to us. Ted and I, Rob, Mike Klein, Gary, staff have met repeatedly to try to sort through ways to make improvements there. We know that is your desire, and we are striving towards that goal. We were, I think, pleased with the results of our supplemental program this summer in partnership with Leonardo. We'll look to probably try to fund that more permanently through future budgets. And the reality is it largely comes down to the prioritization of our fairly limited resources right now, particularly in the Uplands area where we're struggling a bit financially. But that said, we'll make this and continue to make this a priority. A lot of what you saw on the presentation tonight from a photograph standpoint stems directly from the concerns you've been circulating over the last several months. So we'll stay at it, but we recognize we still have a long way to go for consistent and sustained maintenance service down in the waterfront area.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And thank you for that presentation, Rob. It's great to see movement on the restrooms down in the pier area. You can stop sharing your screen there, Rob. I mean, it can have a big impact on the experience, the visitors and the locals. I mean, a clean, comfortable restroom makes for, frankly, an enhanced experience as opposed to, something that is downright frightening. And they've been that way for a while. I'll use the term nightmarish, especially if it's been a while since they got clean. So it's great to see a pickup in the maintenance and the general servicing of it. Yeah, we've gotten complaints. I mean, I got more complaints this past summer than I'd ever seen. So, and it has to do with the age and that we had not kept them up properly. So it's great to see this sort of attention. People are comfortable going to the restrooms, or they go in there and they have a pleasant experience. It makes the whole experience down on our waterfront better than if, the opposite was happening, where you walk away and you go, wow, man, that's something you carry with you when you leave and think about coming back. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to the council member in this area, Todd Lonesey.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Brown. Thanks, Rob, for the presentation. It was very good. It was good to know what's happening. I was the one who actually brought this up because of all the complaints. Of the $400,000 that we allocated or appropriated this year, how much of that has been encumbered so far? Do you know, Mike?
I suspect none thus far. We focused, as I think mentioned a little bit, the budget. We want to complete the Mondstadt Pier restroom first. I think next we're going to have to move to the design phase for each of those other restroom areas. It starts with that compliance plan, figuring out what we can do within this space. That's really a challenge. Every time we rebuild a restroom, we've got to modify for ADA requirements, current contemporary ADA requirements, and the spaces, particularly along the International Boardwalk, are quite confined. So we're going to have to prepare fairly detailed architectural plans and specifications, I think, to make substantive improvements there. Ted, I don't know if we've encumbered any of that money for partition replacement or any of the other electrical work. I know we're looking at light fixtures, mirrors, and all the FF&E typically in those restrooms, but I thought we had already pre-funded that R&R.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. I don't have an exact dollar value, but there have been material that's been ordered, material that is on order, material that has been received, but I don't have a dollar value in terms of what's been encumbered for that.
Okay, well, I was going to say, if we need to move the money around, like, for example, pad 10 seems a lot better than the other ones for things like partitions. I mean, partitions, the ones that are rusted out, and the fixtures, maybe even having, I don't know how many of them have automated faucets, automated flushing systems, but this is a source of pride for a lot of people. It's also important to the business owners down there, and they will not get people to visit if the restrooms are not clean. And this impacts us because it impacts our rent, right? If we don't get people to come down and visit, our rent suffers. So I think it's a really good investment for us. The pier area has really been neglected for a long period of time. I think it's good that we do this. I think it's good, for example, that we look at a storefront improvement program. And I also think that I've heard from some of the business owners that they can't even get internet service. Well, why is that important? Because their point of sale registers operate off of internet. And if that doesn't go through, then sales suffer. And again, we lose money on rent. So I know a lot of this is blocking and tackling. It's not sexy stuff, but it's stuff that has to happen. I'm committed to making it work. I hope the rest of the council is committing to making it work. Those of you who spend time down the pier like me, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there. It's been neglected, and I'm hoping as a council we focus on this, and as a city we focus on this, because it is sometimes the only impression that people get of our city is down at the pier. So I'm hoping we throw more resources towards it, and that it's a priority not only with council but staff as well. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Brad. I might be the weirdo in the room, but I love the smell of chlorine in the morning, in the evening, and now all times of day, because I know it's the smell of cleanliness and cleanliness. And when you're in a pool and you jump in the pool and you smell like chlorine, and you sweat and you smell like chlorine, you know you're clean. And I'm glad this presentation didn't come with a smell package with it. So I just know how bad those bathrooms are. And they definitely need to get done. And like Mayor Brand said, it's sometimes the only impression that people get of Redondo and the pier area. And so I didn't see this report. Maybe I missed it. When was the last time these bathrooms were redone? When was the last time we had some major reconstruction other than just unclogging a toilet or a sink or fixing something like that? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't think we have any last sort of rehabilitation of the restrooms. The restrooms on the Mondstadt Pier, when we assessed them early on, we recognized that those needed a full refurbishment, not just for ADA access, but for everything else. With the majority of the others, it could be, the cleanup effort, as we talked about, paint, partition replacement, fixture replacement. Do we need to go out there and jackhammer all the tiles and walls and redo everything? Maybe, maybe not. But I think if we at least refresh what's there, that'll definitely give it a great facelift.
Yeah, and I think that was a focus even prior to the $400,000 that was appropriate. Is internally we were trying to create a sustained maintenance budget to routinely replace FF&E inside the restrooms, because that's those get etched with graffiti. They get rusty, just given the salt air. And if we can stay on top of that, I think we can get a lot more life out of these restrooms than simply having to reconstruct them every time. So we're really trying to do both with this effort: paint, and refurbish the interior equipment, and then where necessary, reconstruct, to Ted's point, where we have tile deficiency, concrete deficiency, and the like. So we're sort of tackling this on both fronts. And thankfully, with the $400,000, we have an opportunity to expand it beyond just the Mondstadt Pier.
Perfect. That was my question: is how much of a major overhaul versus minor overhaul are we doing on some of this? And you guys are answering that question. So thank you. And I'm glad we're getting to this because, yeah, it needs to be done ASAP. When you go walk into a restaurant, a lot of people say the first thing you do is you go to the bathroom and see how much money they spend on it. So, same thing with us. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time, making this happen. It is really important. A lot of people use it. And thank you very much for the time on this. And I will make a motion to receive, and you guys don't need any directions, just to receive and file the report, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to receive and file the report pending public input.
I'll second.
Okay. Vicky, do we have public comment?
We do. Just a moment. Mr. Joe Smith would like to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just logged in. I am one of the owners of Project Barley, one of the new restaurants down on the waterfront. And if you went over this, I apologize if I'm bringing it up. But as Todd brought up, I just heard him say something about the internet. The reason why I wasn't on the call is because I was running my business that did not have internet tonight, so I could not get on this meeting. I know that we've made some headway over the last couple days. It looks like we're heading down a path to a solution. However, we need some help putting some pressure on Frontier and Spectrum to run the lines. We did get somebody from Gary from Public Works and somebody from Frontier down a couple days ago. We did identify a pipe that is running through the walls that can allow all the businesses that are north of the candy shop to receive FiOS. And that will be a huge win for us. We're the new guys on the block. It's extremely frustrating because we're getting mandates in our lease of operational hours that we need to be open, yet we can't be open. We can't, like tonight, for instance, streaming, I could have had the place packed for the Dodger game. And we can't promote that because we can't put that out there and have people decide that that's where they're going to go view the game. And then it goes out or it doesn't even come on at all. So the POS is the number one thing, obviously. But in terms of us being able to advertise on social media, try to drive some traffic down there to come to our business, let alone just the pier, we can't do that because it's completely broken. And we can't play music, we can't put the TVs on, we can't do all those things. So looks like we've got some traction. I think we've got a solution, but we're not there yet. And anything that anybody on this board can do to help put some pressure on these service providers to get down there tomorrow, if possible, would be amazing. So thank you for, if anybody had anything to do with helping us push this along. I know that I was a very vocal one at our meeting, and I think we got some people driven down there, and I'm not trying to take credit for it. A lot of people down there have been talking about it, and a lot of people help meet with these guys and bring them into their business, show them the structure that they have inside their back rooms and what pipes are there and what rooms are available. And I think we have come up with a solution, but it's not there. And let's keep the pressure on so that we can get everybody down there with a robust internet so that we can operate our businesses as we plan to.
Joe, I got an answer for you, I think, on that. I'll just jump in here real quick. Contact me. My number's on emails on the website, phone number. The gentleman by name of Chris Bredesen runs Captain Kids in R10. He recently ran fiber optic Frontier to Captain Kids. And it was no easy feat. And he knows a lot of the bones down there, and he knows the right people to contact over at Frontier. So along with Councilman Lowenstein, who's in his district, to apply that right pressure to the right people, he can help you out tremendously.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thanks for showing up, Joe, and thanks for your efforts. This has been a bugaboo for, I'm going to say, 6 years. Because I remember Jeff Ginsburg, who was council in District 1, was working to get FiOS down there. And it's very, very frustrating for me to hear that still hasn't happened. So for you to come down and make a show of it and explain what's going on. Now, they've said that it can be done. Have they said they are going to do it and given you a date?
Apologies, I muted him. I'm about to unmute him now. Excuse me.
Okay, go ahead. Did you hear my question, Joe?
Yes, I did. We do have, I got another phone number from Jeff at Quality Seafood tonight. And we did talk to Steve from Frontier earlier, and he did identify and verify that we have a ticket in with Frontier. At this point, Captain Kids is ran from a different location, and it would require I believe it would require different types of piping. We've identified a pipe that is open and available that's already running. So there is FiOS down there. The slip has it. Everybody south of the candy store, I believe, has it. Quality Seafood has it. All the businesses there. The question was, or the problem that the providers would always say is that they couldn't get through the concrete walls. Well, the pipe's already there and it's available. We just need somebody to come down and get the wire ran and get us hooked into the system.
Well, that somebody is Frontier, correct?
Yeah, and we've called them every day. We've got their ear, but they haven't come down yet. We're hoping tomorrow's the day. Just don't know at this point.
Is Frontier refusing to come down there because of the state of our restrooms? Because
pipes, right? It's the pipes. They're running for the pipes.
Otherwise, although it's
I think we're away from
discussion, it's not on the agenda tonight. I could certainly be ripe for a council referral to a future agendized discussion item.
Okay. Well, let's just leave it with Ted, where you work closely with Joe and Gary and make sure that happens. Anyway, thank you, Joe. And yeah, moving right along. I lost track that this was about the bathroom. So thank you, Mike. All right. Any more public comment?
No, there is not.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second to receive and file. A roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Member Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, next up, item N2, discussion possible action regarding the city's outdoor dining program in Riviera Village. Requirements for future permitting of dining decks in right-of-way areas and the city's request to the California Coast Commission to more permanently allow outdoor dining decks and parking spaces inside the coastal zone. Just at a high level, folks, this program has been extremely popular, extremely successful for the restaurants. It's cost the city a lot of money and foregone revenue with parking requirements, but hey, that's the way it goes during COVID. And the Coastal Commission controls the parking in this area. So we've been able to do this under a waiver from them. If they end that waiver, it's over. The program's over. But we're working with them, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight with the Riviera Business Improvement District and all the stakeholders. And Brandy Forbes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. Brandy Forbes, Director of Community Development. You did a really great job of giving an overview there, Mayor. During COVID, the emergency orders, the Coastal Commission granted the city the request to use certain on-street parking spaces for restaurant and retail activity in the Riviera Village. The purpose of the effort was to address the constraints faced by the restaurants and retailers from reduced indoor capacity and COVID-related social distancing protocols, and then as well to address kind of loss of revenues and the economy because of the issues of the pandemic. The city had issued a special event permit to the Riviera Village Business Improvement District. I'm just going to say bid from now on. And the bid coordinated the installation and operation of those temporary decks. Although the current dining decks operations are important to address the public health issues still that we have related to the pandemic, they would not be sustainable as is to continue as a permanent program. And some of the issues that we're faced with the current temporary structures and the use of the parking are that the construction materials were not permanent in nature and are already degrading. Per that hydrology report that was done last year, the temporary structures in place limit the stormwater flow in potential rain events, or could limit the stormwater flow. And that last year we didn't have as many rain events, but that's still an issue there. Several of the restaurants are using more than just one space in the space in front of their property, which might be limiting access to other businesses, such as retail and services. And since this is the beginning implementation, since this implementation is through a special event permit managed by the bid, the individual businesses are not directly accountable to the city for their operations and compliance, even though this is in the city's right of way. There were 73 identified meter spots that have been inactive for the emergency waiver program that had generated over $250,000 in parking revenue in 2019 prior to the emergency orders and the parking no longer being in effect. And that's an average of $3,500 per space annually. Yet the city has waived those any fees for this emergency use, which has resulted, as the mayor mentioned, in a revenue loss. Private ongoing use of the public property typically requires an annual license fee. Given the economic impacts to businesses during the pandemic, waiving these fees during the emergency order made sense. However, a more permanent outdoor dining program should include license fees, since there are definitely expenses that the city incurs in having these dining decks in the city's right of way. Those businesses that are serving alcohol on those dining decks are doing so under an emergency ABC license provision. And at some point, ABC will resume their traditional regulated licensing activities, which may impact those restaurants that are serving alcohol. And then finally, the increased outdoor activity and foot traffic in the area required additional police patrol for open containers of alcohol, over serving of alcohol, amplified music, just to name a few of the issues that they encountered. And the cost for that additional patrol should be considered as part of a more permanent program. The waiver provided by the Coastal Commission for the conversion of the parking spaces is scheduled to expire with the governor's emergency declaration. Tentatively, right now that's set for December 31st, and we're not sure if the governor will extend that order. In preliminary conversations with the California Coastal Commission staff, the commission is open to entertaining requests from municipalities to allow for more permanent outdoor dining options in the coastal zone. But in order to formally consider this type of request, the city must put together a scope for the program and formally request that of the Coastal Commission. It may end up being either a coastal development permit or possibly even a local coastal plan amendment, depending on what that scope of the program will be and the impacts to the parking areas. And also the Coastal Commission had requested that any permanent program, any of the impacts to local access to the waterfront, which includes the parking, that's mitigated as much as possible, and basically offsetting the loss of public parking. So the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the council and residents and members of the community and the business community to an opportunity to talk about possible rules and regulations for continuing a similar program that might be a little more robust. And then, beyond that Coastal Commission waiver that we have in place right now. So the administrative report had noted several issues that would need to be addressed for establishing program details. So you can look at that in the staff report, but I'm going to just run through those real quick, just so you have an idea of some of the things that we need to consider. And as we move forward for a permanent program, if that's how the city council wants to move forward. So for starters, just the number of spaces and which spaces to make available. Currently, the spaces that are being used also include spaces next to a particular restaurant. So they've expanded beyond just what's in front of their particular business. So maybe it's just limiting the frontage of the restaurant property, so it's not impacting those adjacent retail and service industry businesses. And then the total number of spaces that are currently being used per the Coastal Commission waiver is 75. So maybe recommending establishing a similar maximum or maybe even fewer spaces if we're going to limit in front of the businesses themselves. So the second issue is what types of restaurants to allow to apply. The staff recommends that we allow all types of restaurants to apply, similar to what we do with the sidewalk dining permit program. And then construction standards, we recommend that the city require consistent look and material palette so that it's kind of consistent throughout the area. Require that the structure be constructed to standards and criteria that are similar to the city's sidewalk dining permit program. So they're using materials that are more durable and can last, that are made to be more permanent. Require that the structures accommodate for stormwater flow, prohibit any affixed storage facilities in the dining deck areas, restrict utilities and equipment unless, the portable heaters might be approved by the fire department, or if they're going to put electrical, that would have to be in a conduit undergrounded, since it would be a more permanent structure. And then prohibiting portable serving stations on the dining deck or sidewalk area. And then restricting or limiting pavement penetration. So that's kind of the construction standard recommendations. The next issue was safety issues. We had feedback from the both Public Works and from the police department on this. So for example, specifying city acceptable protective barriers and materials so that there's the protection from the moving traffic. Require that there's installation of additional signage that's documenting that open containers of alcohol are prohibited on the sidewalk and street. Just as a reminder, since a lot of restaurants have been allowed under those temporary ABC regulations to sell individual beverages that are open for people to take home. And then speaking of ABC, require additional ABC training for employees of the bar or restaurants to include information related to dining decks and outside alcohol consumption as part of the permit process. And we also need to consider the cost for increased law enforcement and staffing, maybe for certain days of the week or certain months of the year for that increased foot traffic and what has come along with that. Express that the licensee is responsible for the conduct on the dining deck and operating as a restaurant and no other use. And then require that the applicant maintain access to all fire apparatus, including fire hydrants, fire department connections, et cetera. And then the next issue was hours of operation. To allow the recommendation is to allow the businesses to mirror their regular operating hours, but ending by 11 p.m. Just so that they can still operate their indoor after that time frame, but really that having the voices carry and people being there past 11 p.m. may impact the neighbors. And then require staffing during the business hours when they are operating the dining deck. So people aren't just sitting out there and having to go in and having that foot traffic crossing the pedestrian walkway just to order or pick up food. And then the next issue was furniture and equipment specifications. And with the sidewalk dining permits, we had specifications like the quality and type of furniture that would be allowed. And we would recommend just following those same policies, and then prohibiting couches and lounge chairs. Now, it doesn't mean that they couldn't have bench seating, but really not encouraging it to be more of a lounge, but rather, having it serve as the restaurant. And then maintenance and storage. The recommendations are to stipulate that the restaurant is responsible for the maintenance and cleaning, sanitization of the space, that they must secure the tables, chairs, umbrellas, heaters, and other furniture that's permitted for overnight storage. Establish procedures for during storm events. We haven't had anything major as far as rain events, but we have had major wind events just as recently as a couple weeks ago. And then stipulate that the applicant is responsible to mitigate any damage the construction or operation has had on the public right-of-way. And then fees, as mentioned, that there was a loss of parking revenue. So similar to the sidewalk dining program, the recommendation is to require a 2-tiered annual license fee on a per square footage basis. For restaurants serving alcohol, it'd be $1 per square foot per month. For those that don't serve alcohol, it's 50 cents per square foot per month. So just, that's what we have in line already for those operating sidewalk dining areas in the public right of way. And then there's the approval process and criteria. To serve alcohol, it requires an ABC approval and as well police chief authorization. And then it's important that the dining deck space must be in proximity to the restaurant, so you don't have them going multiple doors down just to serve, and then making a direct application process to the city rather than what it was under the emergency order, where the bid had applied for the special event permit and each of the restaurants then had to coordinate through the bid. And then application submittal requirements in line with what we have had for the sidewalk dining permit, such as the site plan, the surety and insurance, the streetscape design features, the business operations statement, just what we are already have in place. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel on that process. And then having that as an annual renewal. And then the last issue is more geared towards the Coastal Commission's concerns. What are the alternative transportation options to offset the reduction in the vehicular parking? So some of the examples that we discussed with Coastal Commission would be maybe public transportation enhancements or shuttle opportunities from other parking lots to the Riviera Village, kind of a rubber tire trolley type of system where people are not coming down and parking their vehicles down in the village. And then multimodal options, public bike parking, for example, and expanding that even more than we have already during COVID. And then ride sharing possibilities. Can we redesign some curb management to really accommodate the people utilizing ride sharing? And then any additional public parking provision, what options could be there. So that concludes the presentation of the information. Really wanted to open this up for conversation. Like I said, the waiver only goes through the end of the year at this point. We have requested that emergency waiver extension, but haven't heard back yet from the Coastal Commission on whether or not they're going to grant that extension. So wanted to open it up for Mayor and Council and your discussion.
And Mayor, if I could, just to try to help corral the conversation a little bit, there's a lot to digest here. As Brandy mentioned, tonight's really a conversation starter as much as it is anything else. We really need, if there's one action tonight we need from you all, it's authorization to continue to pursue at least a temporary extension of the dining deck program as we know it today. But after, and we assume you'll want us to do that, we've already started the inquiry. But beyond that, we need the council to start thinking about both interim steps and longer term steps, because there's a few ways to ultimately tackle this program. We know that the current construction of the materials will not last much beyond this spring, if at all. As Brandy mentioned, they are degrading. They are going to need to be retooled at minimum if they are going to be extended from a useful life standpoint. And we need to begin to warn the businesses about when that would occur and how that should occur from an investment standpoint and what those standards need to look like. Mayor, as you mentioned, it's been a very successful program. Councilman Narenheim has asked for some additional data, sales tax data, parking revenue data. Our police department has prepared that. John Naylor's prepared to speak to that tonight. He had some help from Andrea DeLapp in preparing some of that information. Jennifer looked at our sales tax data. I can tell you, to speak specifically to the success of the program, if you compare Q2 of 2021, which is effectively the period of April, May, and June, this year versus 2020, our revenue is up 88% in the area, in the geo area that we call Riviera Village. If you compare it to its peak historically, it's up 24%. Q2 of 2021 was the highest grossing sales tax period quarter for the Riviera Village in its history. Now, I suspect Q3 will actually even be higher than that. We don't have that data yet. So from a sales tax perspective, there is proof that the program has been very effective. It has worked. It gets a little more nebulous when we talk about parking revenue. We want to qualify that. While we can point to historic meter performance and say the 73, 74 meters that have been affected by this program are not providing the revenue they historically have, and that data is in your packet. I think it's a couple $100,000 that we historically would have generated through those IPS meters. What we can't say definitively is, but for this program, would we have had demand elsewhere in the village that would have paid for that for meter time and had revenue generated. So we have data we can provide for you on a calendar year basis to give you some point of comparison. We don't want you to walk away thinking, just by way of the fact that we have a parklet, we are not collecting revenue, because as you know, parking flows to elsewhere. And if there's demand, we ultimately get paid. If there's not demand, doesn't matter how many meters we have out there, we don't generate any income. So we want to be careful about that analysis, but we do want to recognize it in a longer term program basis. So really, eventually, as you said earlier, Mayor, we are not the sole arbiter of this. If the Coastal Commission doesn't allow this program to continue either in the short term or eventually approve a long-term coastal development permit or an amendment to our local coastal program, we won't be able to create dining decks in the street right of way. We would have to do it outside of areas of parking or provide offsetting parking elsewhere. So we need to at least start on that conversation, both short-term and long-term. Really, we need to work with the bid. We need to hear from you all in the community as to what you want to see while we work towards that longer-term goal. What does the nature of the program look like from a construction standpoint? Because these materials cannot last. We have to reconstruct them in either a midterm solution or a long-term solution sometime this spring, early summer. We must start working towards that goal. So stop talking, but that's.
And I did want to also acknowledge we have Alan Sanford's here. He's with the Riviera Village bid, and he has been a huge proponent for really getting these dining decks up and helping to the restaurants survive through the pandemic.
Well, you're reading my mind, Brandy, because I saw Alan on the call and I was going to go to him before we started our discussion. So, Alan, if you're on and you want to, just give us a brief overview and what your experience has been and going forward, what some of your ideas are. And that way, we can have a more informed discussion, formulating our ideas. So go ahead, Alan.
Thank you all for having me. I'm wearing two hats tonight. One is as a business owner down in the Riviera, but also as the president of the RVA. I'm really proud of this program. It's interesting, but not very long ago, it was July of 2020, and a lot of us were facing pretty grim circumstances, and the RVA really did a great job of standing itself up and taking the onus to build these decks. city staff and the council. I worked, as you all know, across a lot of cities with this, and by far, I'm most proud of Redondo Beach and how the staff, the council, and the RVA worked together to create a really cohesive program. So, and I can attest as a business owner how successful it was. I'm not surprised by Mike's sales tax figures. I've heard from a fair amount of restaurateurs that the best quarter they've ever had, you know, including pre-pandemic, was out there during a pandemic. So what it really opened my eyes to was another no-brainer, which is people in the Southern California like to eat outside. And it only took a pandemic to make us all realize that. And so I'm really passionate, and so is the RVA, about kind of thinking through what it would be like from a long-term perspective to get some permanent outdoor dining there. I also share Mike's some of the preconditions that, you know, when we built these things, nobody was thinking they were going to be there for as long as they had. Some of them were built in haste. The ones we built later on were built with much better quality in mind, but we really got these up, I don't know if you guys remember, in 3 days before July 4th of 2020. So definitely some reinvestment is going to be needed. And I just kind of look at this as a short, a midterm, and a long-term plan here. Short term, my thought is reduce, reinvest, and test, right? I think there's some reduction of the square footage that's going to be called for. There's some area not used, but the RVA has already started to kind of identify. We'd love the city's help in doing that. Areas that we might want to reduce. Definitely reinvest in these parklets if they're in any way going to stay up. And also test ideas, because they are temporary. Midterm, we would love the council to enable or empower the RVA to kind of lead the design process and the design initiative. We feel like we have a unique perspective down there. We're down there every single day. Local architect Miles Pritzkett has donated a lot of his time. We've already started thinking through that. And we feel like we can do it very quickly. So that's one of the things we talked about, asking for the empowerment to do that. We're also looking at bollards, permanent bollards that help reduce soft pedestrian targets. We're working with the police for that. And then long-term is kind of, I think, taking the opportunity to really reimagine and do this right. Perhaps extend sidewalks, parklets, additional bike parking, which is, we all know there's not much down there, but we see it as an opportunity. So please use the RVA. We don't think we are set up to manage the program, so we're happy to hear that it's going to be a city program, but we definitely think we can contribute to the conversation. And I just wanted to thank each and every one of you guys. Our business, the Rockefeller, that literally saved the business. So kudos to you guys for the foresight to allow it. And hopefully we'll find a long-term solution.
Okay, well, that's great, Alan. Thanks for that rundown. I'll share some thoughts I've had and turn it over to the council and share their thoughts and get questions answered. You know, thanks to the Coastal Commission for giving these waivers, and they've done it up and down the coast. It's just not little old Redondo Beach. And this is something that's very much on their front plate, because they've given up a lot of what they would say access to the coast in exchange for these dining decks. But they were very open. When I called them last June, Deputy Executive Director, maybe it was May, and they were very open. But they were, as Brandy was spelling out, you know, access. You know, how are you going to motivate other modes of transportation getting down there? How are you going to do things like make it convenient for rideshare drop-offs, that sort of thing? Those are like simple things. I mean, I just personally, I ride my bike down there. There aren't enough bike racks. There's very few really locations to lock your bike, and people are trying to ride down there. And you know, you end up just locking your bikes together or locking it to a no parking sign or, you know, a parking meter even. So we really, that's a simple thing we should be doing even without having to try to get these waivers. And likewise with rideshare drop-offs, there's got to be opportunities to identify areas where, you know, it's known rideshare pickup and drop-off. So, you know, people are trying to get out of driving and having to park. And to Mike Wazansky's point about, you know, driving demand, this has really driven demand in a huge way. And I've talked to some of the vendors who are non-restaurant owners, particularly the owner of French Furniture I've known since high school, and they like it. Yeah, they don't like losing the parking, but they have way more traffic now. So people find their way down there, and they've got more traffic. So look, that's just my anecdotal experience in talking to that business owner that's non-restaurant, as well as a couple of others. Anecdotally, they've said that they generally like it because there's much more traffic than there used to be, and that makes a lot of sense. I'll be very curious to hear what other cities are doing. I think Manhattan's starting to charge, what, $1 a square foot or something. I mean, that is city land, right? If this was the harbor lease, we'd be doing, you know, minimum rent and percentage sales and, you know, terms and, yeah, and figuring out what's an appropriate lease rate, whatever. But it is city land. And so if we're going to turn it over and restaurants are going to expand their square footage and we're going to forego revenue, then, you know, we've got to find out a way to at least break even or even share in the expansion and success of it as it goes forward. But, you know, as far as rebuilding goes, I mean, we really need to get certainty from the Coast Commission as fast as we can. It's like, give me patience and give it to me now. I don't know that that's going to happen, but we really need to impress upon them that, you know, we need an answer because we need to start making some more permanent anyway, decisions here and moves. So it doesn't make sense to, you know, build a sturdier, more permanent deck and bollards and everything, just to have the Coastal Commission come out, obviously, and say, you know, program's over. So the sooner they can get their hands around it, obviously, the better. And then reducing the areas. I keep hearing that, you know, there's areas, identified an area when it manages the restaurant, said, oh yeah, no one ever uses that deck over there. Well, it's been sitting there all summer. So, you know, I keep hearing we're going to remove these ones that aren't removed. They're not removed and they just sit there. So let me ask Brandy or Mike, who actually decides to remove these and goes out and removes them? Because I know even Alan can identify a couple that, like, okay, get rid of that one. And they just continue to sit there and take up parking. I'll be specific. The one east of Little Sister never gets used. They're using it for storage sometimes.
What I had mentioned earlier was under this emergency order, it is a special event permit for the bid. And then the bid had coordinated with the different businesses on where to locate the decks. So Alan may be able to speak to that. Ted Simon is available as far as what that special event permit had entailed. But it's not, they didn't apply to the city specific directly as a business, but it was more of a holistic program through the bid. Okay. And then the bid had coordinated, having those built. So I don't know if there's like issues with removing those that are not used, or if it's just, let's leave them there for now until we can figure out what's going to happen going forward.
Well, thanks, Brandon. I think what it is an issue, who makes the final decision and who actually goes out there and physically removes it. Those are the two questions. So I don't know, Alan, maybe you have some ideas, or Mike, or.
Yeah, maybe before you go, Alan, I'll speak to it. At the end of the day, we've granted a special event permit that's set to expire here at the end of the calendar year. We certainly could force the modification or withdraw certain elements of the permit if that's our will. The city council and the community certainly has that control. We've given a lot of leeway to the bid because they've managed it so well. We haven't forced or asked them to make those removals official. I think, Alan, there is an internal process for them to evaluate kind of use, and they've made some decisions collectively to make the installations. I don't know how many conversations they've had about more permanent removal. Alan, if you want to add, and then Ted, if you have some thoughts as well. But the city ultimately can force that if that is the will of the community.
I'll answer it in backwards form. The RVA would be the one to demo it. We currently have a bid to demo because we have to plan for all potential scenarios and outcomes. We currently have a bid to demo the entire parklet program, because December 31st is around the corner. So it would be us, the same ones that, and by what I mean by us is it would be the RVA contracting with a professional demolition company. When it comes to picking which ones should go, it's very tricky for the RVA, which is, I think, created some of the rub. The RVA and the whole goal of the RVA is to support each and every business down there. So it creates a really difficult situation for the RVA to point out a certain business or two or three where we feel collectively that the parklet's not being utilized. What we have done is we have created rules around use. We actually have a compliance officer. Funny enough, the RVA hired one because of this. And we have our thoughts on certain ones that may or may not need to be removed, but we also would like the city's participation, and maybe for the city to assert a little bit of authority when it comes to choosing some of these that you guys may think need to be removed.
Well, I think that's probably the way to go. I don't think it's really fair for you guys to sit there and choose sides when, the city can go and go, okay, so that's not getting used. But it's important to use, it's probably just a one-time thing, but I do hate to see when you're driving around looking for parking and there's a spot covered up by an empty parklet and all the rest of them are full and those are just sitting there. So it's frustrating. So maybe Ted or somebody in the city can do somewhat of an assessment, talking to some people, and I really think it's kind of a city decision. Look, it's easy for everybody to get together and go, hey, let's build these parklets, let's do the thing, let's see how they work. And it's a lot more difficult to say, okay, it's working except for these select few, and you see what I'm saying. So I don't think the council's going to vote on which necessarily it's going to be our staff to get a handle on it. Because look, they've got some parking spots just being taken up for no reason, and that's a big deal. So, and I think if the Coast Commission sees us, paying attention in that fashion, it'll help our case when we go to them for other asks. So with that,
Mayor, if I can, let me add to that. Alan was right. Actually, he did a great preview of how this would work. Because when we started the program with the RVA, we've actually given them authorization to build many more parklet areas. And the waivers that we received from the Coastal Commission had authorized significant more area to be utilized. The RVA worked with the individual businesses to see who did and who didn't want it, and work with them on the construction of the parklets themselves. If a business is not using it, we could partner up with the RVA if they're not truly utilized in the manner that they should be utilized, which was an expansion of the business and the operation of the business, not for storage of equipment and materials. Then we could definitely not only support the RVA, but step in and be a little bit stronger arm in assisting the removal of that parklet through the RVA. But we would definitely partner up with them. We worked with them in the onset of the construction of the parklets. There were some restaurant owners or businesses that wanted to take it upon themselves to build their own in a manner that was not in line with the RVA. The city stepped in. We assisted in that process. We would do the same thing on the tail end of it as needed as well.
Okay, thanks, Ted. Let's move on to the rest of the council. Councilmember Horvath.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. I agree with Alan. This is one of those, it really was a no-brainer, and it's too bad that it took a pandemic for us to realize how important it is, and not just in the Riviera, right, but everywhere. And we've talked a lot about complete streets over the years, and this is a good example of why we would want to do that on Artesia or in other business district areas. So let me ask some questions, Brandy. Since we have to deal with it's too bad actually that the Riviera Village is in the coastal zone, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't have to deal with them as an entity. But what are you talking with your cohorts in other beach cities? Because it would seem that a broader collaborative process of coastal cities that are trying to come to some process, as to how to move forward with the Coastal Commission would make more sense than each of us individually, poking at them to make changes. What's happening in that,
I have been in communication, certainly with our neighbors to the north. They're struggling with different issues. So Manhattan Beach has, their issues and concerns that some of the neighbors, because of the proximity to residential and the impacts on the parking in the residential areas, they're having a lot more concerns about the continuation. And they've actually had to scale back what they were moving forward. I don't know that they've actually gone through the process of getting the waivers from the Coastal Commission. So, but I think that Coastal Commission's probably going to, they're not going to have the blind eye indefinitely. So I think whenever they say this is it for the municipalities, it's not going to be just for some and not others. And they have had the same conversation with all of the different municipalities of what is your program that you're looking to do. And I think that the difference is each municipality might have a different impact. So they might have something, different. A lot of it is going to be parking, certainly in Hermosa and Manhattan Beach, as well as for us. But they may have other coastal access issues because some of their restaurants are a lot closer to the waterfront. Right just there on Pier, for example, that they may have, other issues as far as that pedestrian walkway and issues that they have to address because it's not just, it's what resources that are available to the public that are being removed with this. So, a lot of the same issues, but some different. And, so yes, there may be some cohesion in the sense that we all do want to submit something, but I think that the long-term programs are probably going to be different for each community. What are the roadways? The roadways through Manhattan Beach that it might be utilized. Some of them might, they have major volleyball tournaments, for example, and going down to their pier, the businesses started moving the dining decks all the way down. So they pointed out we may not end up having these volleyball tournaments come to our location, to our city, if we just let them expand into areas other than what's right in front of the storefront. So different issues and a little bit here and there for each municipality. But really what Coastal Commission staff, what Steve Hudson has mentioned is, really we need to come forward with what we're going to address in our program. And the biggest thing for them was, they definitely see the benefit of this. They see the benefit. It actually draws more people to come down and enjoy the waterfront. But their biggest issue was, how are we going to address the reduced parking resource?
Okay, and so that was something else I had written here. This is an interesting conversation to have, though, right? That they're always focused on coastal access and parking, as being a component of that. But to the point you just made, we've taken away, I think it was said 75 spaces, but we've seen far greater return on investment in terms of how many people are accessing the Riviera Village, right? So, does that leave us room to have a conversation about, are some of these Coastal Commission guidelines on parking, are they a little bit outdated, or can they be modified? Something else I had written here before Mayor Brandy even brought it up, can they be modified with plans related to expanding rideshare or having offsite parking somewhere else in the city with a shuttle, or expanding the micro mobility options, to and from the village. Like, is there a way to, without replacing on a one-for-one basis a parking space, other ways to convince the Coastal Commission that access is not just about vehicular parking, right?
Oh, absolutely. It was never, they've never had the conversation in the last couple of months of having to have one-for-one replacement. So all those options I noted at the end of my presentation or in the staff report, those were all ideas that were already discussed that they're open to considering. That multimodal, having the, what is that micro mobility that can be implemented, and definitely having more bicycle parking, but really having a plan for how, not just like, oh yeah, we're going to put up so many bike racks. Well, are they anywhere near where people are going to need them? And right. Are they functional? And so what are the actual plans for doing this? Not, hey, we are going to look at marking some space, some area for the ride sharing, but rather here's our plan for how we're going to do it. So they are open.
I think there's an intersection here, right, with other conversations that this council has been having about finally really truly implementing the master bicycle plan and the local travel network, which is another slow speed network that we just got a grant from Caltrans on for the entire COG area. So I think we have some, at least rough stage plans, and we have all expressed on this council the desire to put more paint on the streets and stuff there. So, if we are planning that, and we do have some CIP projects related to that, to me, that also speaks towards the city is moving forward with a plan to get more people to areas like this without having to use vehicles. I'm just saying that, let's not lose sight of that as you're doing your work, because Ted and his team are also focused on those projects, which clearly intersect here. Okay. You guys covered the infrastructure thing, because I had questions about that related to the way they were built and stormwater, because some of the things we had talked about with the dining deck program was the fact that we would need to change the infrastructure of either the streets or the sidewalks or whatnot to allow for drainage and stuff. But clearly it sounds like you guys are already trying to think about what would a structure look like that could accommodate that without us having to, dig into the asphalt or the sidewalks to accommodate something new. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, it's fair. And I think it takes two different forms depending on a midterm solution versus a long-term solution, right? If we want to rebuild these for the next couple of years, we can effectively, I think, rehabilitate and redesign the structures that we have out there today in a higher quality way with a little more hydrology, sort of forward thinking. But if the long-term solution is we want to build out sidewalk plaza space to eventually effectively extend our sidewalk dining program in lieu of on-street parklets, then we have a completely different analysis associated with how the entire hydrology of the street works with these new sort of plaza bulb outs. So it sort of takes two different forms depending on, are we talking midterm or are we talking long-term?
Well, I think, from my perspective, that's something that we've floated around here for a long time. And it's definitely a long-term strategy to consider and think about. It clearly will require an enormous amount of funding to do that. But we clearly have midterm ways of accomplishing this. And, the village has always been a magical place, and this has made it just that much more magical. So I'm a fan of doing what we need to do to focus on these midterm solutions. And by the way, what I would say is, and you probably have already thought of this, but as we're moving along these lines of communication with the Coastal Commission, we should also be figuring out everything we need to do internally, as opposed to waiting until we get maybe final approvals from them, because the bid and the businesses, they're not going to want to have to wait months afterwards for us to get our act together after we finally get if we get approval from the Coastal Commission to have this become a more permanent process. So I'm just hoping we're going to run in parallel with our internal systems and creating the permitting process and figuring out what would the cost structures look like for businesses, square footage, whatever it is that goes into developing a hardened program. I just want to make sure we have that. We're working on that at the same time that we're working on these larger issues that need to happen to make it a permanent fixture down there. And then, of course, just on a side note, not in the coastal area, but I'm hoping that we're also talking about this for elsewhere in the city as it relates to sidewalk dining or, other parklets, where and if possible, it shouldn't just be something that is happening in the village. There are other areas that could benefit from this, and I don't want to lose sight of that. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Brad. Yeah, Alan, I remember when I got the first phone call from you in June of 2020 when we were working heavily with shutting down the Catalina right away or street, and we had some other ideas. And I remember the first conversation we had that this is great. Let me send you some photos, but we need some relief now. And I just want to remind everyone that with the record revenues down there, we've only really started experiencing really bad parking issues here in the last few months. And while the staff report says 73 parking spots, $2,300 a piece, the problem is most of those parking spots were not full at all in any way, shape, or form. So, we were creating revenue down there. And to Mayor Brand's point regarding bike parking, we've created a lot of new bike parking. Ted Simon bought some bicycle racks down there. Thank you for Public Works. The fantastic job. I know the Riviera Bid got some bike racks down there as well. They're all being used. And so I think moving forward, we're going to have a lot of different multiple strategies to implement the parking issues and relieve the parking issues. Alan, I love your point with reduce, reinvest, and I forgot the third word you said there was. But the way I look at it.
Retest.
What would you say?
Retest.
Retest. Yes, thank you. So we have three things that we need to deal with: short term, medium term, and long term. Short term is we need to get the extension into the motion I'll make a little bit later on will include asking Coastal Commission for extension, as well as immediately speaking and engaging in conversation with Coastal Commission to see what the LCP amendment and or CDP amendment will be, whatever Coastal is going to require of us. We are definitely going to need to change our parking requirements and parking needs. As the staff report correctly identified, we're adding floor space or table space, which would technically speaking, you need to add parking. But with that said, we should be able to get the parking data that we've had and show that, we've only recently had issues with parking, and that is all-time high. Utilizing bike parking, utilizing ride share, other areas to park, I think is a really important part. Medium term, get the Riviera Village to charge, just so everyone knows, the restaurants down there do not use those things, those garden parkettes for free. They get charged for maintenance. It's not something for us to get involved in the Riviera business, but I definitely want the Riviera Bid to start charging a few bucks more to get the demo cost, the reconstruction cost, and upgrading the maintenance cost, so that we can have a more medium to longer term, year and a half, 2 years of garden parkettes, so that we can get to the long term. And what I want to see is, Alan, thank you very much for going down this path, is already starting the community partnership, blending and braiding funds and resources, have Riviera bid, engage in a conversation with city staff to start the process of Riviera Village to not just design what the garden parkettes will look like, but where to put the garden parkettes. And that's a really important part because who gets them and where? We have to limited parking, limited resources. Locations design, what they will look like. They got to be consistent. One thing I've been saying to many different people is it's I'm blanking again on the name, but if you compare us to Hermosa Beach and Manhattan, it's all very consistent. It's not different. Hermosa has the Burning Man Festival parkettes. Everything's different, everything's exotic, different colors, different designs, but it doesn't flow together. It doesn't look professional, it doesn't look good. Riviera Village has a very good, consistent branding all the way throughout. Love that. Regarding sales tax figures and parking meter revenues, do we have any of that? It wasn't blue foldered. Do we have any of that information regarding parking meter revenues?
Yeah, we can recite that for you. We didn't want to just slam you into the blue folder without any context. So, and John Naylor's here if you want any real specifics, but let me just read, I think maybe some primary data, and then John, fill in the blanks, or Andrea, if there's more to it. Aggregate, this is overall Riviera Village sort of meter comparison. If you go back to calendar year 2019, parking revenue generated in the area was 1,380,000, almost 7,000, 1,387,000. 2019, last calendar year pre-COVID. 2020, we collected 1,037,000 for the calendar year. This year to date, we've already collected 1,117,000 with still a couple of months to go. And I don't know exactly when that cutoff was, Andrea or John, if one of you could fill us in, but arguably you still got 20-25% of the year left to collect. So we may exceed 2019 data. I don't know if we've done that analysis.
Yeah, I think that data cuts off in October this year, but and that's with 74 less meters, where in comparison 2019, you had your full complement of meter parking down there.
Right. So to the point that, at the end of the day, it's not just about a loss of meter. It's about, are you generating traffic that actually, in a sense, lifts revenues throughout the village? And that's clearly what's happening in 2021. Would not at all be surprised to see our calendar year final revenue figures exceed 2019 peak. So the program's working with even fewer meters available to the public. That said, one other point to make is we are re-energizing the Walker parking study that the council directed kind of in the early stages of the pandemic that we had to table just because there wasn't an ability to really collect the data. Walker is looking specifically at parking in the area, how it coincides with residential permit programs, how it coincides with our employee permit program, the various programs that we operate. And that is another wild card here with the Coastal Commission. Our bid and some of our employers love the employee parking program. The Coastal Commission is a big fan of that. And ultimately, there's been debate historically about how many employee designated meter areas we should have. So that's potentially another bargaining chip if we want to introduce it. Clearly, our goal is to quantify how many spaces we want to request that we cannibalize here, for lack of a better word, and see what we can use to justify and offset that and ultimately get buy-in from the Coastal Commission. We know we don't need any more than 73, right? We're operating successfully on that. Several of you have already identified that we can reduce the number of parklets and still be successful. So I think that's our not to exceed. Ultimately, as we plan with the bid, we may want to reduce that number and then seek that as the cap with Coastal in our conversations.
So to that point exactly, removal of some of the garden parkettes. I had a great conversation with one of the restaurateurs today about removal of one of their parkettes. They were very open to it. They said, yes, we understand. We hear it's coming. We thought about this already as well. It doesn't make much sense for us to have it in the location they had it at. Ted, what is it? I really want to back up the Riviera bid. They've had, I don't want them to have to be the enforcement arm anymore. Do we have to, can we be the enforcement arm? Do we have to just kind of tear everything up and re-sign and exactly where we want these things, who gets what? Is that kind of the nuclear option in terms of the license agreement?
I'm not sure that that's the best approach, because our permit with RVA is to not only manage it, but also to fund it. And as Alan mentioned, they actually have funding set aside for the actual removal. As the entity that built them and put them together, I think it makes sense that they go through the demolition or the removal, if you will.
Right. So okay, let me before you finish, there are a few dining decks or dining garden parkettes there that are not done by the Riviera bid. For instance, Riviera House and Three's Little Sisters are not done by the Riviera bid.
Well, and to that end, Councilman, what we could do as we extend this permit theoretically is we could extend it with conditions and say, from the city's perspective, permit program by and large continues. However, we request that these locations be removed. Now, if, to your point, if the decks near Riviera House and Little Sister weren't installed by the bid, we may have to seek our own action to actually remove those outside of that bid concept. Ideally, to Ted's point, the deconstruction would occur by the bid, as that is a condition of the original program. We would rather not intercede in that regard, but we have no trouble recommending and being the hammer as it relates to which parklets go away.
Yeah, and
let me just add one other thing here. If they're not constructed by the bid, obviously they had to go through the review and approval by the bid. Where we would really want to step in and be the hammer is if there are any challenges by any of those business owners to the bid in order to deconstruct and or to remove. We don't want them to have that adversarial situation. We would step in at that particular point and take care of the deconstruction of it.
Right. So exactly. Thank you. So I'm already looking. I have 3 locations off the top of my head already that I would like to go down the path of, and I'll Ted and Mike, I will reach out to you separately. And there's some on Avenue I there that I'm others that I'm looking at that I'm interested in curtailing or drawing back as well, because they're just not simply being used, especially now that we're going into the winter time. It just doesn't make any sense for us to be using those parking spots. And I think Brandy, going to the Coastal Commission and saying, hey, well, listen, we're already curtailing some of these locations and we're already drawing down. They're going to help with our conversation with the Coastal Commission, saying we're being cognizant of parking.
Oh, absolutely. When we submitted the waiver and the additional amendments to the waiver, we're up to 239 spaces in the blocks that we have got approval for. We're obviously not utilizing, all of those spaces for the dining decks, but those have been approved. When we had the conversation with them and explained that only 75 are actually, being utilized right now, they were very impressed with that because it's just fewer spaces that we have to try and find other options for. Right. So I think that if it is to, if we start reducing and seeing where, okay, well, we're only going to allow the space in front of the business, or these are not going to, move forward. I think that, as that number reduces, I think that they, can breathe a sigh of relief in their review.
Okay, so Mike Wazansky, do you want me to, in my motion here, to give some direction to remove certain locations, or leave that up to staff right now to deal with on the license renewal by the end of the year?
Yeah, maybe give us direction to work, and we won't do this in a vacuum. We'll consult the community in this effort, but reduce the number of parklets as part of our ask of the Coastal Commission, meaning we're at 73 spaces now, seek to reduce that number through removal of certain parklets. And then we'll come back with some recommendations on where those reductions should occur.
Perfect. Okay. And that way we can be the hammer so that the bid doesn't have to be the hammer. I'm also going to give you guys direction to start immediately working with the Riviera bid in terms of design, in terms of what it would look like, and location and funding opportunities that the bid might be able to help provide in a public-private partnership. And let's see, obviously we can deal with the multiple strategies, deal with the parking issue at a later time, but I'm also going to be including the obviously this extension for springtime for late as possible, and then start a conversation with the Coastal Commission regarding any LCP or CDP requirements that we're going to need. And Alan, we talked about earlier today about how you guys, it's going to be your guys' responsibility in terms of getting the parkettes longer term, maintenance for longer term, if we can get them past April or past the spring into the summer months. So we'll find out from the Coastal as to what they're feeling. Does that work for you, Alan?
Yeah, I think once you guys have a, tentative sunset date, we can determine how much maintenance we're going to need. And what I'll do with the RVA board right now is to start kind of looking at the decks, looking at which ones need more than the other. We'll kind of start putting together some costs.
Okay, perfect. Thank you guys very much. Next up.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Narenheim. Councilmember Obaji.
Councilmember MD might have been before me, but
well, my computer shows you're first, but go ahead, Councilmember MD.
No, I don't have a problem with him going first. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, I agree with what the mayor said about the space next to Little Sister. I don't make it down south much, but I definitely have noticed that not the one directly next to them, but further down has been abandoned, and I'm surprised no unhoused individuals have taken up housing there. But looking, this might be a stupid question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyways. Looking at this space between these two parkettes, there's red curb. I realize there's a fire hydrant here, but would that not be allowed for them to take this spot so that they don't end up consuming parking spots on either side here?
Yeah, they would not. That was one of the requirements, that we have to maintain access to fire hydrants, ADA access for ramps, etc. So no, they would not be able to.
Okay, I mean, it seems like hose could make it over, but I guess that just makes the job a little more difficult. All right, and then I realize also with the South Redondoans that this is not really a conversation starter, but when I go to Manhattan Beach Sunday at noon and there's no volleyball event going on, it is still nearly impossible to find parking, despite the fact that they have two underground garages, one at the police department and another at City Hall or something like that. And they have those little mini structures that are just like one floor up. And they have, a lot of those types of spots. So what I'd like to be interested in is, have we looked at, and is there any political will to develop even a one level partial overhead parking lot here? I'm not talking multiple, because just counting on Google on Google Images here through satellite, there's like got to be 150, 200 spots in that triangle parking lot, right? So you wouldn't even need to put a whole deck over the whole thing to make up for those 70 spots that we need to compensate for the parkettes. So I totally agree with, parkettes, long-term, permanent, make this more European and the like. But we've really got to come up with a solution for additional parking, or at least try to maximize additional parking. So why is that not? I realize underground parking structures are going to be prohibitively expensive, and nobody's really come up with the funding for how we could possibly achieve that. But a single layer of one level parking structure seems consistent with the scale of what's around here, because there are 3-story buildings here and 1-story buildings. Is that something people are against? But I think that should be something that we look at. Otherwise, does the bid have any thoughts on where we could find additional parking spots, or else contract for additional parking spots? I'd be interested to hear that. So those are kind of my thoughts on the subject. Mike, Wazanski, you have any kind of feedback on that?
Yeah, my general response is, and you may have seen this or you may not have, we can forward it to you so you have it. We did evaluate with a consultant the cost to actually construct a below ground deck in the triangle, and therefore increase significantly the number of spaces. It is expensive. It's in the $20+ million range, depending on size and scale and how far you want to take it out. We purposely did not investigate the above deck structures at the time, although it would likely be somewhat cheaper, not necessarily significantly cheaper, but somewhat cheaper, because our understanding from the community is that the villagers and community members enjoy the open space feel that the on-grade parking provides, and that we didn't want to materially impact that. In fact, in an ideal world, we would likely be building underground and graining up some of the existing trial to create more of a central kind of meeting or gathering or public plaza space. So it's not so much that there isn't infrastructure capacity to do it. It certainly could be built. It's really a matter of look and feel of the community, and how really how willing we are to explore that kind of an architectural implementation.
All right. And I can appreciate that.
Question for your colleagues more than it is for me, candidly.
I can appreciate that. It definitely would change the feel if you have another, level here. So what are the means by which we could fund a $20 million underground parking structure there?
Would be bonding. You could do a targeted bond that would ultimately be paid off by increment parking revenue, future increment parking revenue. We looked at the cost of debt service. That is one way to do it. It would take a commitment. You could assess for it. You could simply float a general obligation bond, similar to what we've discussed for other capital investment in the community. So there are ways to do it. But it is an expense. It's a significant one. It would eventually pay for itself. There is no question about that. But it's a matter of moving down that path and really executing that sort of will.
All right. Well, I think it's time to move Redondo Beach into the 21st century, and that's one way we could really revitalize our southern area. So I would favor getting a serious discussion, agendizing a serious discussion on bond financing for such an underground structure. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, what I would say to that, Zane, I think Mike's got a good interpretation and feel for how people would feel about all of a sudden the structure there. But more importantly, I think before we did anything like it, we'd have to identify that we actually have a parking shortage, right? I mean, yeah, we might be close to right where we need to be. So, remove some of the decks and then, because we are getting a lot more use out of it. And so, yeah, I don't know. We would have to define that there is actually a shortage and by how much before we went down that road. So anyway, Councilmember MD.
Okay, so catch me up a little bit. The bid built these parklets, and I just want to kind of take the information that we had from when we did the pilot program and the self-reported costs. When you start putting in all the factors that Brandy said that we're going to need to address, and infrastructure-wise, these dining decks could be potentially in the $60,000 to $80,000 per deck range. I'm estimating there's 20 parklets. How many are there actually built down there right now? I know there's 73 spaces, but how does that translate into parklets?
Alan, do you have any information about how many there are out there?
Yeah, I could tell you while you're talking, Council Member MD, I'll look that up and I'll raise my hand.
And so then, I don't like anyone being the hammer. I just, that just doesn't sound pleasant at all. And all it's going to take is just somebody to come up and start screaming and yelling because they've been nailed, right? So $60,000 to $80,000 to do a parquet, properly, are you talking about the city doing that or about the restaurant themselves paying that out? I mean, to make that upgradable to the kind of infrastructure that we're talking about, all the different things you do. These are just things, I'm not asking you to answer these right now, but these are all things you got to consider, and people have to be aware that that's what the costs are going to be. So when you start talking about $1 per square foot, if I'm paying $2.50 or $3 a square foot in my lease of my building, of course I want to do $1 a square foot out in the parking lot, because it's about, because businesses is all about what you're paying and your revenue is per square foot. So you can't just look at lost parking revenue on this. So to Mr. Obaji's point, if you're going to try to do you're going to try to do a parking garage, there needs to be some conversation about the economics of all this. So that, and then that extra money isn't that it would go into our pockets, but it might go into a parking fund to be able to build that parking deck. And to the mayor's point, we don't know what the demand is yet. So I'm just putting out there, these are all things that have to be considered, because the revenue that's contained from these parking decks is huge. And I don't know that just covering the cost of parking is truly in the best interest of the city. Let's see. And as far as it could be, and I don't understand how you can determine that a restaurant doesn't get a parkette just because it's not being used. If they're willing to pay the price per square foot, then it's subjective. I would imagine if it's not being used, if they're going to have to start paying for it and it's not being used, of course they would let that go, because again, it's about revenue and cost per square foot. I'm not sure that I hate to put any kind of subjective analysis into whether or not somebody gets rid of their restaurant parkette. Further, is it fair for someone then to they get charged per square foot on the public street, but then at the same time, there's some of them that have been using outdoor dining in their parking lot. So really what they're doing is they're giving up the parking that they have on the street in addition to the parking that they would have provided on their land. So at what point, that's almost like double dipping when it comes to parking spaces. You're talking about giving up parking spaces in the street, but are you also discussing the parking spaces, the 73, is that including the parking spaces that are being given up in parking lots?
So you're referring to the temporary use permit program, which employed not only in the village, but elsewhere throughout the community. That's a separate calculation. That's not part of the 73 spaces. These are metered public parking spaces. Specific to the broader community.
That's what I would suspect. And so, but the fact that parking lot is being used is also being impactful as to when you're talking about the number of parking and whether or not that's necessary. But again, that could be answered to the mayor's point based on how much parking do we actually need. Now we're focusing completely on restaurants. What about the non-restaurants? So we're talking about having this be just for them. But what about the impact on the non-restaurants? Are we just going to make the Riviera Village simply a restaurant zone? Or do you want it to be so that it's truly accessible to all different kinds of businesses? It seems like that synergy works well to do it that way.
You might remember the original special event permit, and Brandy and Ted can speak to this, and Alan certainly can, was meant to actually apply to all forms of retail. But I think what we found over time through trial and error and interest and actual business participation, Alan, Brandy, Ted, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's really the restaurateurs who appreciated this opportunity the most and have continued to drive this. Moving your wares in and out for retail purposes is a challenge. I don't know how effective, we have the occasional sidewalk sale that's still occurring. You still have a few businesses down there that candidly are in an unapproved capacity, displaying their various merchandise, in front of their business. But extending that out into the street right away, I'm not sure how much value we get from it as a community and they get as a business. I'm Alan, Brandy, feel free to.
Yeah, I think, it was utilized when they had reduced capacity allowed indoors. At some point there was like a 50% capacity in retail. But once there was, full capacity allowed in retail establishments, the issue is, it's also not only you have to store it, but then also the how are you managing that so that things don't walk away? So having the staffing capacity to monitor not only what's in the store, but now having to monitor something that's across the sidewalk in a space. So I think that the retail interest had reduced, and then as well for services, a lot of services. Either they didn't need it or their own license for the type of service they are prohibited them from doing things outdoors. I think there was
I get that. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but you're going down a path I was not thinking. You guys are thinking very narrowly that these parking, because you're talking about what was happening in COVID, and we're talking about doing this past COVID, if we can get permission, if we can show all the kind of parking issues. I'm looking at it as it's real estate. It's real estate to me. So if you're going to offer me a piece of real estate for $1 square foot, I get to do whatever I want with it. So if I was a business that was not a restaurant business, and my concern is that the parking is all being taken up by the restaurants and there's no parking for my business. Well, then what would stop me then from doing a parkette at $1 a square foot and just saying, and using that as parking spaces for my customers? These are all things that you have to think about. And if you really want fairness in everything, you got to consider all different businesses. What are we giving away as far as that real estate's concerned? And what's the use of it? The purpose of it. Now, once restaurants are going to be able to go into full capacity back into indoors, they're paying $2.50 a square foot for that, and then they're going to pay $1 square foot for ours for that. You could argue that they can't use it when it's raining day and all that, but these are all things you got to consider when you're considering this program. It shouldn't be subjective. It should have just clear rules on how it goes. But when you do that, how are people going to interpret those rules and make that happen? That's the kind of stuff you guys got to think about when you're talking about doing this program past, if the Coastal Commission allows you to go further.
Right. And Councilwoman, if I could, that is why, we ultimately, the city gets to be the arbiter of the license rules, right? We get to set the condition and quality of the standards. We get to set the condition of the furniture, fixture, and equipment that are there. That, in a way, the reason I think we would prioritize dining, arguably, is because we can create a consistent program that has a high quality look and feel. It gets much harder to begin because remember, this is open space area. How these decks are ultimately used affects the visual aesthetic of the entire village. And to the point made, I think it's a funny one, the Burning Man concept in Hermosa Beach, you can get to a point where this becomes a deterrent. It becomes unattractive. It actually drives away business. So we have to manage the guidelines very carefully. And I think that starts with use and ultimately what we see as having value in the utilization or repurposing of street right-of-way. So retail, I don't think creates as much value for us in that regard, and it becomes harder for us to govern and regulate. And that's, I think, why we would prioritize dining in this concept. And this goes way back to our piloting days, way back in the day when we evaluated this. Retail hasn't been a good mix from a licensing standpoint because we're repurposing street and parking. We want to make sure we're generating value and it's going to be done in an attractive and consistent manner. But ultimately, yes, you as a council get to decide what are the rules and regulations in each of these individual licenses. That's up to us.
I would agree with you. I was down at Rock and Fish in Manhattan Beach, and they have those the pretty sturdy dining decks. They have to do it on the hill, so they had to do some pretty intensive dining decks over there. But it was very crowded. There was so much traffic, next to the beach from there, and to get in and out of there, it took 20 minutes to go in and out there. So, I mean, we only ride our bikes now to Manhattan Beach because it's just so crowded. But my point is that you got it. So it's not a big, you just said that there's not a value in the retail. So you're basically telling the retail, well, that's too bad. You don't have enough parking. You get out. I mean, I'd hate to give up that mix of businesses in any area, not just Riviera Village, but in any area.
Sure. No, and it's not to say that the retail doesn't have a value in the village. It's just in terms of prioritizing and repurposing street right-of-way space. And ultimately, I think what you'll hear from some of the retailers, I don't know if they all believe this because we've had this back and forth before, is that if dining is successful, it generates increased foot traffic and at least window shopping and ideally additional sales. So if we're having a successful dining program, ideally retail is seeing increased patronage. Now, whether or not people are buying, that's going to be ultimately dependent on what retail has to offer. But we see restaurants in the village really being the engine that drives the train. Now, we have service that does well. We have retail that's part of that. And we like the mix. That's what makes the village special. But when it comes to prioritizing the parking area, I think we've got to determine what gives us the highest and best use on a collective.
Look, and I said retail, and I could kind of put that whole category, retail, service, and really, because I was thinking, massage place, dentist place, they're not going to benefit from the increased foot traffic necessarily. No, people didn't just suddenly decide they want to have a dental cleaning. So So at what point is it fair to them that these spaces are being lost? All this might be a moot point once we do the parking study and we find out we don't need the parking. But that's not what I'm hearing from certain businesses is, and a big part of it was the filming last week that happened. They took up a lot of parking spaces on that film. I'm not against filming. It's just an example and how you had to circle around that parking lot for quite a bit of times to be able to get a parking space. You got it. It wasn't like it was impossible. There was still parking available, which leads to the point of how much do we really need? But I'm just bringing up all these points as what's considered truly fair. And it's not, you can't just look at it from the lens of restaurants. You've got to look at it from service and your mix that you want at the Riviera Village. When you're talking about real estate, you've got to treat it like real estate, whether it's a parking spot. It isn't just about parking revenue loss. If they're going to use it for another purpose, it is now real estate. And you shouldn't be just charging them based on parking revenue loss. And in addition to, when you're just determining what's lost, you've got to really look at what the parking lots that are being used as well. And so if you've got a restaurant that's got a parkette and they're using their parking lots, that's quite a bit of parking they're displacing. And so you got to enter that into the conversation as well.
Well, and plus you're adding table space, right? You're increasing overall opportunity for dining and therefore the number of visitors you fully occupy. So it's really hit in three ways in that scenario: front street parking, private rear parking, and the fact that you now have more people attending your business.
Exactly right. And that's parking you're taking up for the service and the retail people. So those are all things to consider when you're doing all that. And I'm not just saying it's a squeeze of things. When I was looking up some old data from the pilot program, the restaurant there had self-reported that they increased their revenue by $800,000 over 18 months. So it's not that they couldn't afford to do something like that. So just all kinds of things to consider. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Amity. I think a loose model to use really is what we do in the harbor. I mean, it's city property and we look at, square footage, price per square foot. everything, percentage sales. So, this is our property and it starts to become like that, but we don't know that anything's going to happen until the Coast Commission acts. So
Exactly.
we can loosely start getting ready, but I don't know that we crank everything up till we find out where that's going. So
Agreed. I just wanted
to
have the bigger conversation. It's not just about.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great conversation we're all having.
And just point of clarification, the dollar per square foot's really what we see as a rent license fee. That's why Brandy mentioned offsetting revenue for parking loss might also be a fee, an ancillary fee we want to include as part of the permanent program. So the square foot is us looking at it from a real estate standpoint. That seems to be where coastal committees are landing on the value of street lots. We may want to make it more expensive. If there's massive demand, maybe it's $1.50. Maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be driven, I think, by economics and sort of supply and demand, and what the willingness of a restaurateur or another type of user would be willing to pay.
And to that point, Mike, the fees that we suggest are just noted in there. That's what we charge for sidewalk dining. So if they're utilizing our public right of way that's in the sidewalk, well, that's not taking away parking revenue. So there need to be the parking revenue in addition to, so some kind of offset with that. So that would be all need to be evaluated. But just the point of we're not collecting revenues at all right now on those spaces.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my comments pretty short because actually I was going to bring up exactly what Laura brought up. But before I do that, I'm a huge fan of the dining decks outside. I was there last Saturday, had a problem parking, especially, after hours, after the filming was done. But I survived. I found a place. It was no big deal. And this week I'm taking my colleagues from Germany there. I'm curious to see what their reaction is going to be in terms of street dining. But really, I've gotten the same complaints that I think that Laura has gotten. I've gotten complaints from yoga studios, physical therapists, dentists, other people. And I think we have to be very careful in going this route. I still am a huge fan of this. We need to make sure that their customers, some of which are not very mobile and don't want to walk too far, have a place to park. Because if we take up the entire part of Catalina in dining decks, people are going to have to walk 1 or 2 or 3 blocks to find parking when they park. And so that's, we have to be careful. Not everybody's young and mobile like us. And, some people might have kids that they have to take to a dentist and they got to schlep them all the way across the village, right? So, I think we should, I'm all in favor of continuing this, but I also want to make sure that we take good care of our tenants, the tenants that are down in the village that are not our restaurants. I was going to ask Alan, what kind of feedback he's heard from them, because I'm sure you've heard that kind of feedback from people that are not restaurateurs. And how do we balance that so that everybody's happy in this? So I don't know, Alan, do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I wear 2 hats. So one is as a restaurateur, but the other is with the RVA. I think what we found is that with the other comments that were made, the retailers, I was at a board meeting this morning, they don't find it very valuable to move their stuff nightly in and out. I think there's special events that they could do that, but in general, I don't see there's going to be a lot of value there. I think you also, we did a survey, the RVA did, to ask retailers, I think you'd get a resounding like, yes, we like it. Yes, it's created more traffic, but you got to fix the parking. So I think it's a generally symbiotic environment, but we've got work to do and we've got to make steps to improve the parking. And I'm sitting here listening to this, and everybody's just kind of saying the same thing, which is it's good, but it's not perfect and we got to work on it. And if I've learned anything, it's small steps are what creates solutions. And I'm hearing everybody kind of being on the same page, which is you can't create a massive program in a day. So we are the RVA, the restaurants, everybody's in sync with we've got to make it better and we've got to make parking better. I don't think it's as drastic as it's being made out to be, but I agree. There's some My biggest fear is that we become this hollow village that you drive down in the winter and there's 200 seats that are empty and everybody goes, oh man, that place lost its charm. So don't count me in the bunch of people that just wants a bunch of seats. And I don't think the RVA is that either. I think everybody wants a nice, well thought out program that serves retailers and restaurants.
Okay, great. Those are my comments. I'm glad we're all on the same page. It sounds like we're all in the same direction. We all like this, but we all need to be very careful about the other tenants that are down there. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, okay. You don't have to chew on there, Brandy and Alan and everybody. Hopefully you get a sense of what everybody's thoughts is on the council anyway. Thoughts are. But Councilmember Narenham, I believe you wanted to make them. Or I see Councilmember Obaji has his hand up again. Go ahead, Zane.
Just a quick comment. What we saw when we had those neighbors with their public hearing, one of the neighbors had built a roof with heat lamps in it, to keep the seats occupied year round. I think overhead structure, not an enclosure so that you're totally indoors, but keeps it, airflow on the side and potential heat from the top that's electrically hooked up or otherwise hooked up to a gas line could be a good way to go as far as the long-term permanent structure should we get there with the parking solution. So, all right, that's my comment.
Okay, Councilmember Narenheim.
I want to wait for public comment before I make my motion.
Apologies, I did not reach out to the public. Is there public comment on this, Vicky?
Well, we have one person signed in, but she didn't specify if she wanted to speak on this item. So we'll ask if she wants to raise her hand to speak. And there are no e-comments submitted for this item. Doesn't appear so.
Okay.
No, sorry.
All right, did you want to make a motion, Councilmember Narenheim?
Yeah, when it comes to retail, just one of the things from the very beginning I was adamant about was that all businesses get treated equally and have rights to access this program, whether they are dentists or retailers or whatever they may be. And the retailers from the beginning never really saw much value in it, and they still to this day have the ability to take advantage of the sidewalk retail event, which is part of the program right now, but they just don't want to take advantage. It doesn't make any sense to them. So they've been fine being inside. And again, when it comes to parking, this is a great problem to have. I met a council member down in the village a few months ago, and they said it took me 10 minutes or five minutes to get a parking spot. I had to walk an extra half a block, and I said, thank you very much for coming from your city here, and that's a good problem to have. So, it's a good problem to have. So my motion is to make a motion here to direct staff to do the following items. Talk to California Coastal Commission for immediate action on one, extension of until springtime or as late as possible. Two, start to convert a conversation regarding outside garden parquet dining for amendment of our CDP and LCPs. Whatever we need to do to make that happen long term, as well as give direction to staff to reduce the number of parklets and location to work with the Riviera bid and to choose those areas, and also start a conversation with the Riviera bid for staff to start a conversation with the Riviera bid for design and location for the garden parquets for the long-term locations. Mike, does that work for you? Brandy, does that work for you?
Yep. Yeah, we can work with that.
Randy, I can email that to you too.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, not seeing any further discussion, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein. Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay. Well, there you go. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Alan. It was a good conversation, and yeah, to be continued.
Thank you very much.
Great opportunity. Great to see it turned out to be so successful. Who would have known? All right, one more item here. Well, a couple more items. City manager items. Any city manager items?
Yeah, just one. Councilwoman Emdy mentioned it, and I know Nils and Todd have received complaints as well. We are very aware of the consternation that's been created by the large film event that's occurring both in our city as well as the city of the parking was significantly impacted both last week, tail of last week, and yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It does conclude tomorrow. That is the good news. I can tell you that this event has spawned some internal reconsideration of our film permitting guidelines for both external noticing as well as internal noticing, and making sure that we evaluate larger events on a more global scale. So we're aware of the consternation. We are sensitive to it, and we will be making some program changes from a policy standpoint, administrative standpoint, on a go-forward basis.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Mayor and council items. Next item P1. This is discussion on action, possible action regarding the Brand Juan Mendoza tripartisan land use initiative. So yeah, everybody's familiar with the state laws that have been coming down. And so we wrote an initiative to amend the Constitution, state Constitution, to make zoning and land use community affairs. And that's the official name of it right there. And yeah, many cities are already starting to pass this resolution because we kind of have no alternative. That's really what it's come down to. It's very unfortunate. So we're all waiting for title and summary. Once title and summary hits, well, it'll be off to the races to get the signatures, which is going to be a huge lift. But yeah, just looking for support, obviously, from the city council to support the initiative to it's a shift of power, really. It's a shift of power from the state back to the local communities over zoning and land use issues, with some exceptions. The Coastal Act and large infrastructure projects, related to transportation and power and water and those sorts of things. So, and communications. So that's the gist of it. Most of you probably already know about it. It's there in the packet. So yeah, that's kind of it. Just looking for a motion to support it.
Motion to support.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Horvath, seconded by, was that Councilmember Obaji?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So this will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nierenheim?
Public comment.
Any public comment?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Candace Nafisi would like to speak on this item. Just a moment, please.
Hi, this is Candace Nafisi from District 3, and I just wanted to applaud your efforts on entertaining this amazing opportunity. I think it's far along for us to get our own local control. So I strongly urge you to take a stance on this. Thanks so much for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other public comment?
No, there are no e-comments submitted and no one else on the beat.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath, you had your hand up.
I put it up to make the motion.
Councilmember Obaji.
I know the mayor is kind of gliding past this, but I just wanted to commend the mayor and thank the mayor for doing this, because this is not a task that somebody who's in retirement or in their second term really would be expected to take on. But he's taken on this statewide initiative. He's driven lots of places, talked to different groups, rallied bipartisan support, has drummed the fundraising bell, tried to raise money for it, solicited from all sorts of folks, including myself, and basically taking on a statewide initiative against the strongest powers while leading our city. So thank you, Bill. I really, Mr. Mayor, I really appreciate it. I think all our residents appreciate it, and I'll be sure that my constituents know about it and support it.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Obaji, really appreciate it. It's quite a lift. And not alone, a lot of people are working on this all up and down the state. Got 5 proponents, 2 from the Bay Area, 2 from our area, and 1 Republican mayor of Yorba Linda, Peggy Wong. So that's why we call it tripartisan. It includes Democrats, Republicans, independents, declined estates, really have a lot of support within the communities and certainly at the local elected level. So yeah, and I'll note that the biggest donor is the AIDS Healthcare Foundation so far, whose lawsuit we just joined today against SB 10. So. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. Yeah, I'll just say, you guys have no idea how much energy Mayor Brand has with everything he's got going on. I attend maybe a half to a third of the meetings that he does on maybe a third on this initiative. And, he's been working on this for 2 years now, started writing this up, drawing this up, and 7,000 signatures a day is what's going to require in order to get onto the ballot. So think about that, 7,000 signatures a day. It's going to be a monumental task, a ton of support out there from a ton of electeds. It's something that has really congealed so many different city councils, so many different people from different walks of thought processes to make sure that local city councils and cities have the power. And one of the things that I heard, which is the strongest thing, was that one of the calls just from the other day was that state legislators are taking over city councils and rights of cities, and they're blaming cities for the affordability crisis and not building housing. But yet the vast majority of state legislators all came from city councils and local jurisdictions. So they're the ones who are city councils supposedly not doing anything about it, and now they're out at the state telling us what to do. So something that's sorely needed. So thank you, Mayor Brand, and everyone else supporting this.
Great, thank you. The state's really going to start cracking down. They've started a housing accountability unit. So they're cranking up a big infrastructure in Sacramento to visit planning commission meetings. This is all over the state, visit planning commissions, city councils, and it's getting crazier and crazier. So anyway, with that, I guess I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Great, thanks you guys.
Final,
Nice
please.
to report that our city council, voted unanimously to support it. I think you're going to see that a lot. Hawthorne's going to be hearing it next Tuesday. So they're already, Olivia Valentine's already wants a copy of the resolution. So, okay, next up is mayor and council referrals to add.
Mayor, I think
proceed?
Vicky's got to read the title.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vicky.
Thank you. Council adopted by title only resolution number CC-2110-100, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, California, expressing support for the Brand Wang Mendoza Tripartisan Land Use Initiative to amend Article 11 of the Constitution of the State of California to make zoning and land use community affairs and state interest. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Vicky. Mayor and council referrals to staff. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. Mike, thanks for bringing it up. I want to thank staff. The parking issue in the Riviera Village with the filming has been a huge issue. I didn't find out about it until I got my first complaint last week when someone showed up with a piece of paper. Thanks to police department for getting on it. Chief Hoffman, you guys went down there and got them to do things they didn't need to do. I'm glad they did it in terms of opening up parking. Appreciate that. I would like to make a motion. Actually, I believe we have, Mayor Brand, I think you can help me on this. We have our ability to assign or remove commissioners. That ability is now in place, right? It's been more than 30 days since we had the second reading. So I'd like to make a motion for the first meeting in November to come back with an action let me see, right down here for action and for discussion of possible action regarding to assign and or remove commissioners from all different commissions, including the GPAC, with a discussion to be held on the November 4th meeting as to what people and commissions we want to deal with.
Well, I will say the council doesn't assign commissioners. They can, I guess, remove them. If they do, then there's an opening and you have to post it. But there's some openings coming up. I know Recreation and Parks Commissioner resigned recently. So I don't know, Vicky, has that opening been posted yet?
We'll be posting tomorrow, actually.
Okay. And then there's a historical commission opening, and there's several opening. Well, the Board of Appeals is wide open, and apparently we have an appeal coming up. So going to have to start appointing. So I have some appointments coming. It would probably be better once those openings are there to have another discussion, which would be more like, how long is the opening posted, Vicki?
It has to post for 10 days after the vacancy is called. So that one that you just put it on this evening, the resignation you accepted, will post tomorrow. So in 10 days out, you can make
Okay.
recommendations.
So 10 days. What about but there's nobody on the suspension appeals board, correct?
That one has been posted. We have very few applications thus far.
Yeah, so I would encourage anyone out there interested in recreation and parks, historical, suspension and appeals to get your applications in.
So 10 days from tomorrow is like the 30th, I want to say 29th, 30th. 30th. So we could fill that position, correct?
Which that was accepted just this evening? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And Mayor Brand, is there any other positions other than the suspension of appeals and that one position that you need to be filled?
Right. I mean, normally I'll just try to bill them in the next meeting. I mean, it's just an item I put on the agenda. I'm filling these positions.
Well, we need to have the removal action as well.
Yeah, that's a separate council action. I don't do that. So it sounds like you're making a motion to have an item to remove commissioners at the next meeting.
Yeah, I will amend it so you can bring it back anytime. So I will amend my motion to say for the next meeting to remove commissioners from any one of the commissions at the next meeting, November 2nd, excuse me.
Was that remove and or reassign or just remove?
No, just remove because Mayor Brand will have a list to assign.
Well, I have some appointments coming, obviously, what I just mentioned. If there are more holes, then I'll have more later.
It sounds like remove and assign.
No, he'll have a list.
Meeting. If you remove, if you have a hole on a commission, you have to post it. You can, I suppose, move commissioners, but yeah, you have to. If there's an opening on a commission, it has to be posted. So once there's an opening created, then you have to post it. You don't remove and replace at the same meeting. So is there a motion or?
That's a motion to remove commissioners at the next meeting from any one of the commissions.
Second.
Okay. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
No.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
I can't believe you're just going to pull people off commissions. No,
I'm shocked. You don't want a District 5 person on planning commission?
they're never going to be a District 5 person on that as long as I'm here.
All right, you guys, we're not supposed to discuss it right now. So let's just keep moving. Do you have any more referrals, Nils?
I do not. I'm good. Thank you.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Obaji.
I do. First, I'd like to agendize a discussion on an administrative review ordinance, and that discussion should include budget implications, potential review officers, and what other cities have done to successfully enforce an administrative review ordinance to eliminate blight. As well as, I guess, the fourth issue is where our ordinances need to be updated to prescribe blight. So, for example, our ordinances prescribe abandoning vehicles, but they do not prescribe abandoning real property. And I've got such a complaint just today about real property that's abandoned and derelict.
So Councilman, could you, I got budget and then we've got blight options. What were your points?
Potential review officers and what other cities have done.
Okay, so benchmark city.
Like
and
Beverly Hills, Manhattan Beach.
Review officers.
Yes, so somebody's got to do it. I understand that Mr. Proud does it for some group of appeals.
Yeah, it's a collective effort. It's sort of a ad hoc assignment based on workload at the time. several department heads, sometimes our captains even. I know Captain Hoffman's involved in one now.
Cool.
We do some rotational evaluation, but if this became a more permanent program, it's going to require a little more structure.
Right. I mean,
all right, we've got time for this, right? This is a pretty substantive item. So,
yeah, we've got time. I mean, I thought I did it in one of my first meetings, but apparently it fell through the cracks. So I'd like it to occur sooner rather than later because I'm getting more concerns about blight, both residential and commercial, and make sure that the city is equipped to deal with them.
Is that sooner rather than later? Does that extend into, say, January? February?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
But not like, April next year.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim?
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein?
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath?
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji?
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Anything else, Zane?
I just wanted to ask about to the planning department where we were on the parking study. It seems like we've heard nothing so far about the Artesia parking study.
Yeah, and it's because they're doing a lot of the technical work right now. So the consultants have gone through and evaluated. They've had to look at the different land use assumptions. And when I say that, it's not just what the proposed land use would be, but if you're going to have activity nodes, what would be the appropriate, and where the focus was on restaurants and professional offices, what would that mix end up being, being projected for that kind of encouragement for those types of businesses? So they've just come up with those land use assumptions so that they can do the build out analysis. I know this is a lot of technical language, and I hate using jargon, but it's they do a build out analysis so they can determine what that future demand would be. So they can run it through their model. They have the model configured for with the parking for different types of uses. So it's just really creating that build out from the land use assumptions. What could the potential build out be of the area, and then running that through to see where we're at with parking, what are the parking demands, and what we can evaluate for revising our own parking, and then what are our needs for the additional parking. So they are working on it. It's not that, but it's in that technical side of things. But we will be having a workshop when they've run that, so that we can see where that lands.
Thank you. All right. And the last thing, Mr. Mayor, if I may, is a referral. Captain Naylor, if you're on, I'd just like to show you what we've been seeing in our district and request the police department's help. This is graffiti at the Dollar Tree. This is at Perry Park. And so that is, it's an issue. And some of it, as I've sent the chief, clearly has racial, offensive symbols in it. So I think Public Works is jumping on this as quickly as they humanly can. And obviously the removal of this stuff promptly goes towards prevention, but it's kind of all come on so quickly all of a sudden that we really need to see, I think, figure out what the best police tools are to kind of stomp it out as soon as possible and get to the source of it, please.
Great. Thank you. I was not aware of the graffiti at Perry Park, but at the dollar store, we did take a police report. So we will be looking into it. We called Urban Graffiti. Urban Graffiti also puts it into their database as well to try and identify any kind of characters along with that graffiti. So then they also come out and remove it. So I believe dollar store has been abated already, but I will confirm and I will look into Perry Park as well.
And just a reminder for everybody, the first call on graffiti should be to the city's graffiti hotline, Urban Graffiti.
Can I get that number? Because actually I don't even have it.
I think I've got it on my cell phone here. John, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it still 310-318-0685? Is that right, John?
Did you say 0615?
0685.
Is that what you got, Horvath?
Let me look.
No, I didn't.
310-318-0685. If not, repost on the city's website. But that should be the first call whenever a resident, that's what I call when I see it out and about.
Yeah.
I call the graffiti hotline.
Okay.
And they document and they'll abate. Sometimes Public Works has to be involved. Sometimes police is called out if there is, suspected gang activity. But we have an abatement contractor that manages these complaints.
All right. But then this also goes back to my administrative review ordinance point, because when it's on the Dollar Tree should be notified, and Dollar Tree should either fix it themselves or else start to get fined.
Well, and we will, under our contract, it can be a little tricky depending on the nature of the material that's been graffitied, but any public facing area, even if it is private property, our graffiti abatement company will go in, contact the owner and make sure that they have consent to make the removal. If it is sensitive block wall or something that requires some additional response, then they may hit the pause button. But our graffiti hotline, our graffiti contractor will manage that or help manage that.
And that includes residential. We had a residential
Correct.
wall on Ripley recently, and they took care of it within a couple of days.
Awesome. So yeah, the cleanup looks strong, and everybody seems like they're responding quickly. So I guess my point on this referral to staff is let's try to get on the prevention or identification and enforcement side of it. Thank you. That's it.
Excuse me, in terms of tools too, something we need to consider, especially at high profile areas like Perry Park and areas of the pier, cameras. I mean, cameras have been very effective in many cities in combating particularly crimes like this. Don't always work, but they can have an impact. Councilmember Imdy.
Question. When the census data is out, when are we going to be seeing redistricting? Possible redistricting?
Pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll be bringing the initial discussion on that at the second regular council meeting in November.
Oh, okay, that is soon. And then I think were we gonna skip city manager items? Just want to make sure.
Oh no, we already had those.
We did that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know how
Mike
I missed that.
mentioned.
I thought he was just talking on the points before. Okay, sorry. I was expecting a bigger report. Apologies. Okay.
Yeah. Councilmember Lowenstein, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I forgot to ask one thing. When is I guess it's an ordinance or a discussion about remote meeting attendance? When is that coming back? Do you recall? Meaning that people could dial in for a meeting.
I don't have it. I don't know. Vicky.
There's a Mike Webber.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
The
Well, we
question
had
is-
an item to come back on how we can participate remotely, regardless of the pandemic. There was an item, and we already discussed it, and it was
Yes.
to come back to discuss how council members or mayor can participate in a regular council meeting remotely, if they're on a business trip, something like that.
Yes, actually, I thought that we covered all that in the last report, but I will follow up with.
Oh, well, then when are we going to implement it?
Actually, we can implement it immediately.
Really?
Just a policy, right?
Yeah.
It's just your council rules, and you don't need to implement it yet, as long as the governor's order keeps getting extended. Because there'd be no reason to put up with all the extra requirements when you don't have to put up the extra requirements. So as we start getting notice that the governor's order finally expires, because I believe you remember the clerk brought an item to you in September, thinking that it was going to expire at the start of this month. So as soon as we know that the governor's order is expiring in the near future, which, whenever we know that, then I assume the city manager will agendize an item for you on your rules and procedures.
Okay, thanks, Mike. That explains it. So nothing planned right now. We'll just see.
Right. Unless you want to invite people into your living rooms while a pandemic is going on, which I wouldn't suggest.
Well, my only thing I have to say about it is we know it's going to eventually end. So we might as well tackle this sooner than later. So, I mean, that's my only thought on it. I mean, I don't know how long of a discussion. Yeah, I don't know how long of a discussion it's going to be, but I thought we discussed it and we're going to implement it.
They're your rules. So whenever you want to agendize it and are prepared to do it. I mean, I don't disagree with you. Just, but you're going to want those rules to have an effective date, and you don't quite know what that is yet.
So I think your question.
Condition. Can they have an effective condition like spring into being once the governor's emergency order?
Right, exactly.
Oh, yeah, sure, it can.
All right.
Yeah.
Todd's question was, when is it coming back? And it was thrown back, and well, that's up to you.
It is. I mean, they're your rules and procedures. When we had the discussion, there weren't ordinances. Other cities hadn't put together ordinances. It's basically a policy that restated the requirements of the Brown Act, and we talked about it and how it differs from it. So whenever you want to have a discussion, modify. You have an outstanding long-term, since before the pandemic, report on your rules and procedures as a whole, but part of that includes how do you deal with the issue of texts and email and other actions during council meeting, and also how you put items on the agenda. And you'd had come up with discussion, had a two-phase thing, but that really can't be done until the emergency is ended and the remote. So if you want to take a piecemeal, it's not up to me. I don't have any preference.
Well, maybe what I would suggest, Todd, if you're open to it, is if we, you're going to have a pretty heavy agenda November 2nd. The next 2 months are going to be somewhat busy. If we can find a fairly quiet evening, or relatively quiet evening for us in latter part of November, early December, maybe we just slot it in as a placeholder discussion.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so are you talking just about the ability to attend remotely, not all the other things that...
Unless I hear otherwise, we're going to hold off on the old one until we're back in the council chamber with whatever modification you made to allow remote attendance.
Is that clear, everybody? So it's coming back in December or so?
Late November, early December.
Assuming you have a quiet meeting.
Yeah, I was wondering about when that's going to happen.
When is the last time we've had?
Fingers crossed.
Tonight. Thought this was going to be a quiet evening. Okay.
It kind of is. It's 9:36 and we're going to adjourn. That's pretty good.
Way. So is there a motion to direct, or that's just coming back? It's not a big deal.
Yeah, Mike's just going to end.
All right, fine. Okay, well, that's it, folks. Yeah, as Councilman Rooney says, about 9:35. So yeah, everybody have a good night. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
All right. Thank you.